Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Joseph Sonnier. Joseph Sonnier was born in 1955 to a respected family of doctors in Shreveport, Louisiana. From a young age, he aspired to follow in his family's footsteps and become a doctor. With exceptional abilities, Joseph earned a Bachelor of Science in Medical Science from the University of Baton Rouge in 1976. He then applied to Louisiana State University in Shreveport and began working at Parkland Hospital in Dallas, Texas. Joseph effectively balanced his university studies and work. He consistently refined his knowledge through hands-on experience at the hospital. The hospital management recognized Joseph's success and dedication, and in his final year of training, he was appointed chief resident. After completing his studies, Joseph chose to specialize in pathologic anatomy and went on to become a pathologist and laboratory director in Leck, Texas. Joseph's life was marked by personal tragedy, including the loss of the woman he loved, Becky. His 27-year marriage, which he considered happy, ended in divorce when his wife fell in love with another man. Joseph accepted her decision and agreed to the divorce, believing that the woman he loved had found happiness. Joseph had a strong sense of responsibility and nobility. After his divorce from Becky, he maintained a warm relationship with her and continued to support their 2 sons. 2 years later, Becky was killed by her new husband. Joseph was shocked by her death. He often thought about their past family life and mourned her loss. Despite his own grief, Joseph remained a source of strength for his family. He took care of the funeral expenses and helped his sons cope with the trauma. His sons later credited his support for helping them overcome their pain. The tragedy had a profound impact on Joseph. He devoted himself to his work and raising his sons. However, the grief finally gave him the motivation to change his life. He decides to start a new chapter in a new city. In 2007, Joseph moved to Leck, Texas, with his sons, where he became the chief pathologist at Covenant Health System. Feeling the need for a change, Joseph enrolled in a local dance studio. He enjoyed the classes and met new women, which helped fill the void in his life. A few times, Joseph attempted to form connections with his dance partners, but it never worked out. That was until Michelle Tina walked into his dance class on a warm summer evening. Her elegance, poise, sense of humor, and sparkling eyes immediately caught his attention. Her radiant smile illuminated the room, and Joseph knew right then that she was the one he had been searching for. Michelle, too, noticed Joseph's confident and respectful demeanor on the dance floor. As they danced together, the 47-year-old Michelle and 57-year-old Joseph found that they complemented each other perfectly. As they continued to dance together, they grew closer with each passing session. Eventually, Joseph asked Michelle out on a date, and she agreed. This marked the beginning of what seemed like a happy new chapter in both of their lives. Michelle possessed an irresistible charm that had a profound effect on men. Michelle was a classic example of a femme fatale, a woman with an undeniable magnetism that drew attention and sparked passion in those around her. Michelle, like Joseph, is also starting a new life after personal emotional breakdowns. She is running away from the fear and anxiety associated with Mike Dixon, owner of a private clinic for cosmetic surgery. Michelle met Mike in 2008 when she came in for Botox injections. At first, there was just casual social interaction between them, then light flirting followed and they began a romance. Michelle is a successful and free woman. She worked as an executive in the NFL, built a successful career, and didn't lack for anything. Mike, on the other hand, is bound by his marriage. A few months after living a double life, his wife discovered his affair with Michelle and filed for divorce after 20 years of marriage. Mike is so captivated by Michelle that he barely notices that he is losing everything. Mike left his wife for Michelle, even though she never announced she would marry him. When Mike doesn't get the attention he expected, he tries to pressure Michelle, which scares her. Michelle recognized Mike's manipulative behavior and desire to take complete control of her life. This realization caused her to end the relationship. In 2010, Michelle and Mike went their separate ways. However, even after the breakup, Mike continued to pursue Michelle, urging her to return. His obsession exceeds the limit, forcing Michelle to find a way to escape Mike's control. Michelle moved to Leck to start anew, where she met Joseph, a charming and kind-hearted man. They quickly connected, and their relationship blossomed into true love. Joseph's sons and relatives welcomed Michelle with open arms. Joseph spared no expense in giving her gifts, taking her to the most luxurious restaurants and private clubs, and giving her romantic vacations. As Joseph realized he had found his perfect match, he took Michelle to Los Angeles and proposed to her in front of his entire family. Michelle, 47 at the time, was smitten with her new partner and frequently expressed her love for him on social media. However, her ex-lover, Mike Dixon, couldn't help but notice these declarations of love. Mike is furious when he discovers that Michelle has moved away and is planning to marry Joseph. He realized he couldn't win her back but still dared to propose that they rekindle their past relationship, suggesting they become lovers again. Michelle firmly rejected his proposal, refusing to engage in a love triangle, and immediately informed Joseph about Mike's suggestion. After some time, they started to feel like they were being watched. At one point, they even noticed something that looked like a camera flash through the backyard window, but they didn't pay much attention to it, not realizing the seriousness of the problem. The situation got out of control on July 11, 2012, when a gardener came to Joseph's house to discuss a garden renovation project. When the landscaper arrived at the home, he tried to contact Joseph but got no response. He saw an open door and, thinking Joseph might not be able to hear him, went inside. The house was in disarray, and there was a bullet hole near the front door, indicating a possible intruder. The landscaper cautiously went further inside, looking for Joseph. In the garage, he found Joseph lying in a pool of blood on the floor with no signs of life. Joseph's body had stab and gunshot wounds, leading the landscaper to think the perpetrator might be nearby. He immediately left the house and called for help. At 2:48 p.m., the police department received the call, and several patrol cars were sent to the scene. When the officers arrived, they found Joseph Sonnier. Medics confirmed that Joseph had died. The incident shocked the public, as it happened in one of the city's safest and most affluent neighborhoods, where crime is extremely rare. Joseph, a respected professional, was known for his calm and kind nature, and it seemed he had no enemies who would want to harm him. Although a window was broken, it was clear that the incident was not a robbery, as nothing was missing from the house. However, a bottle with a hole shot through its bottom was found at the scene, suggesting it was used as a makeshift silencer for a gun. A forensic team arrived soon after to collect evidence, and it appeared that the perpetrator was inexperienced, as they left behind many traces. DNA from the bottle and blood samples were sent to a lab for further analysis. Detectives interviewed neighbors, but none of them reported seeing or hearing anything suspicious. There were no CCTV cameras near the house. According to the investigation, the perpetrator entered through a large window overlooking the backyard, making the attack unexpected. In the dining room, the attacker confronted Joseph and started shooting. It is likely that the wine bottle was used as a silencer at this point. Blood stains in the hallway suggested that Joseph was still alive after being shot. He entered the garage, where the attacker caught up with him and stabbed him multiple times. An autopsy revealed 5 gunshot wounds and 11 stab wounds. The circumstances suggested that the murder was not random, but the identity and motive of the killer remained unknown. The investigation focused on the people closest to the victim. During an interview with law enforcement, the victim's fiancée, Michelle, reported strange things in the months leading up to the murder. She believed Joseph was being stalked. Michelle had seen a stranger lurking outside Joseph's house, watching the door and windows. She also mentioned that Joseph had received persistent calls and texts in the period leading up to his death. Although officers confirmed this information, they initially thought the calls and messages were from other women with whom Joseph was allegedly having relationships, as witnesses claimed he was in contact with multiple women at the time. Investigators questioned Michelle about whether she knew of other women involved with Joseph. Michelle claimed she was unaware of any other women. Joseph's sons also denied the possibility of their father having mistresses, stating that infidelity was not in his character. Despite this, investigators continued to explore a motive of jealousy for the crime. During the subsequent interrogation, Michelle succumbs to the pressure and reveals that she knows several women who may be involved in the crime. According to Michelle, these women are ex-girlfriends who often stalk Joseph. Although he ignored them, they continued to express their displeasure about his upcoming wedding to Michelle. The women in question include a woman from Florida who persisted in contacting Joseph even after he revealed his relationship with Michelle. There was also a nurse, Joseph's colleague, who often called and wrote to him. Additionally, a woman whose daughter sent a letter accusing Joseph of abandoning them shortly before the murder. In the same interview, Michelle mentioned Mike Dixon for the first time. She hadn't thought about Mike spying on her and Joseph before, because Mike stopped paying attention to her after she refused to be his lover. Michelle assumed that Mike had accepted her decision to marry Joseph and move on with his own life. The police visited Mike. He cooperated and spoke with the detectives. Mike revealed that he had been deeply in love with Michelle and had even divorced his wife to pursue a future with her. However, after Michelle rejected him, Mike gave up. He started a new relationship with a younger medical student who corroborated his alibi. At the time of the crime, Mike was at work and then spent time with his new girlfriend, which confirmed he couldn't have been involved. The investigation encountered significant obstacles. Every suspect, including Michelle, had a solid alibi, leaving detectives stumped. They searched for enemies of Joseph or individuals who might benefit financially from his death. But no new leads emerged. Unfortunately, forensic analysis does not provide any information about an individual, so police cannot identify the owner of the DNA found at the crime scene. Just as the case seemed hopeless, the police received an unexpected call from Paul Reynolds. Reynolds reported that his roommate, David Shepard, had recently confessed to a murder in Leck, and then attempted to take his own life but was saved. According to Reynolds, a neighbor shared specific details about David's crimes with him, including details that only a few detectives knew, such as the use of a glass bottle as a silencer. This new information led police to conclude that Shepard was indeed connected to the crime. The witness came forward claiming that David was not the mastermind behind the crime, but rather a person who was hired by an unknown doctor involved in plastic surgery. Police launched an investigation into the new suspect and discovered that Mike Dixon was the person who hired David. When questioned at the police station, David began to confess and revealed that Mike Dixon had indeed hired him to commit the crime. According to David, he and Mike met at a bar while both were going through difficult breakups and formed a friendship. Mike shared his sadness over his lost love, Michelle, who was now engaged to someone else. He claimed that he couldn't move on and was willing to do whatever it took to win her back. David alleged that the initial plan was to discredit Joseph, Michelle's current partner, in the hopes that Michelle would leave him and return to Mike. However, David claimed that murder was not part of the original plan. First, women were paid $1,000 each to pretend to be Joseph's mistresses and pursue him. Additionally, a letter arrived from a woman claiming Joseph had abandoned her and their child. Joseph consistently denied these allegations, and Michelle believed him. It was later revealed that the camera flash seen by the couple was actually the light from David's cell phone flashlight. David had been driving to their house to create the illusion of surveillance. Funded by Mike Dixon, who covered gas and other expenses. When these tactics failed to break the couple apart, Mike plotted a more extreme solution. He offered David 3 silver bars, valued at around $110,000, to kill the pathologist. David agreed and received one of the bars as a deposit, which he immediately sold at a pawn shop. According to David Shepard, the situation escalated out of control when he went to Joseph's house. He claimed the shooting was unintentional, and that after shooting Joseph, he became afraid and Joseph began to run away. David shouted to check on Joseph but received no response. He then followed Joseph into the garage, where he found Joseph lying still and heard his last breath. David rushed to check Joseph's pulse and confirmed that Joseph was dead. David admitted to stabbing Joseph several times but could not remember the exact number. David also admitted that he considered calling for help using Joseph's phone, but ultimately chose not to. Instead, he put the phone back, mutilated Joseph's body, and then went to Mike's house to get the rest of the gold before attempting to take his own life. According to David, he didn't fully understand what he was getting himself into. When he faced Joseph, he realized he could not continue killing. If it weren't for an accidental gunshot, Joseph might still be alive. Mike Dixon was arrested by the police on the same day and charged with first-degree murder. This was based on testimony from David, as well as a large amount of other evidence that included incriminating phone calls and text messages where Mike made explicit confessions. When Mike Dixon was first interviewed by detectives, they had hoped he would confess to the crime. However, he denied everything and asked for a lawyer, which led to a lawsuit. David Sherd, who had been involved in the crime, made a deal with the prosecutor where he pleaded guilty to his role and gave up his right to appeal the sentence. As a result of this deal, David received a life sentence without the possibility of parole, instead of the death penalty. Mike Dixon, on the other hand, maintained that he was not guilty, despite the circumstantial evidence against him. However, in a surprising turn of events, David, who was a key witness for the prosecution, changed his story during the trial. Under oath, David claimed that he had committed the crime alone and that Mike Dixon was not involved. He said that the silver bars found at the scene were meant to be used as an investment in a business that the two of them had planned to start. The jury was unable to reach a unanimous verdict, and a retrial was declared. The second trial occurred in 2016, resulting in Mike's conviction for first-degree murder and a life sentence without parole. However, his lawyers successfully appealed the judgment, and it was overturned. Mike was released on $2 million bail, but the case was far from over. The prosecution sought to reinstate the original sentence through the state's highest criminal court, which would have otherwise led to a third trial. On February 11, 2019, the prosecution's motion was granted, and in April 2020, Mike's bail was revoked, prompting a new arrest warrant. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals ultimately reversed the lower court's decision, reinstating Mike's life sentence without parole. The judge ordered Mike to continue serving his sentence, and he is currently incarcerated in a Texas prison. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ryan Poston. Ryan Poston was born on December 30, 1982, in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky, to Lisa and Jay Poston. He had a strong and loving bond with his 3 sisters, Allison, Catherine, and Elizabeth, throughout his life. Growing up, Ryan had the opportunity to travel extensively and attend schools in Switzerland and the Philippines. This exposure broadened his horizons and gave him an adventurous spirit. Ryan was also known for his striking good looks, which, coupled with his charismatic personality, made him stand out in a crowd. After graduating from high school, Ryan attended Indiana University, where he earned a degree in political science, history, and geography. He excelled academically and graduated with honors in 2005. Following in the footsteps of his family members, Ryan pursued a career in law. He enrolled in the Salmon P. Chase College of Law at Northern Kentucky University. Driven by his admiration for the legal profession, his esteemed grandfather and uncle, both practicing attorneys, were his role models. Ryan's ultimate goal was to own a successful law firm. While in Cincinnati, Ohio, Ryan dedicated himself to helping people who couldn't afford expensive lawyers. Despite being young, he had already built a strong reputation, and many sought his advice. He worked hard to ensure everyone had access to fair and competent legal representation, regardless of their financial situation. After a painful breakup in 2011, Ryan turned to his cousin Carissa for comfort and support. During a visit to Lexington, Kentucky to spend time with her, he met Shayna Hubers, a Lexington native, and his life took an unexpected turn. Shayna Hubers embodied the quintessential Southern girl, renowned for her outgoing personality and effortless ability to form friendships. Her warm and charming demeanor naturally drew people to her. After graduating high school in 2009 with a full scholarship, she continued her education at the University of Kentucky, majoring in psychology, before pursuing her master's degree in psychology at Eastern Kentucky University. Despite their 8-year age gap, Ryan was 29, while Shayna was just 21. Their feelings for each other grew increasingly undeniable. With each visit Ryan made to see his cousin Carissa in Lexington, he found himself devoting more time to Shayna. As they spent more time together, their bond deepened. Shayna began spending more time in Highland Heights, the Kentucky suburb where Ryan lived. Every weekend, she would pack a bag and visit Ryan's home, dedicating herself to taking care of him, cooking his meals, and cleaning his living space. As time went on, Ryan and Shayna's relationship grew stronger, and he took her to meet his parents. She was over the moon with excitement, telling her friends all about Ryan and even saying she wanted to become Mrs. Ryan Poston. But their promising future came to a tragic end on October 12, 2012. In a panicked call to the police, Shayna admitted to fatally shooting her boyfriend, Ryan. The details she shared revealed a devastating scene of domestic violence that had spun out of control. According to Shayna, Ryan had tried to physically abuse her, dragging her out of the house when she attempted to gather her belongings. She told the 911 dispatcher that Ryan had confronted her with a gun, leading to a physical fight. In the heat of the moment, Shayna managed to grab the gun, but she was intimidated by Ryan's size. In a state of panic, she pulled the trigger, ultimately shooting Ryan. Shayna admitted that she believed Ryan's death was inevitable, so she claimed she wanted to end his suffering. She told the 911 dispatcher that Ryan was in distress, making unusual sounds, which motivated her to shoot him several more times. Afterwards, she revealed that she left the gun on a bookshelf. Minutes after Shayna called 911 to report that she had shot her boyfriend, officers were sent to the scene. When they arrived, they told Shayna to come out of the apartment with her hands up. At first, she was hesitant, but she eventually followed their orders. As she walked out, they told her to lie face down on the ground. It was clear that Shayna was very upset as she complied with their instructions. After the officers handcuffed Shayna and put her in the back of their patrol car, they entered the apartment and found Ryan Poston's body on the dining room floor, covered in blood. Crime scene investigators arrived and examined Ryan's condo, which looked a bit messy, but nothing out of the ordinary for a 29-year-old man. They found that Ryan had a concealed carry permit and owned weapons, including the Sig Sauer semi-automatic gun that Shayna used to shoot him. Based on the evidence they gathered, the investigators concluded that Ryan was sitting at the table when Shayna opened fire. They knew this because of the blood found on the table. However, the fact that several items on the dining room table were not disturbed raised doubts about Shayna's story. If there had been a fight, the items would have been disturbed. The crime scene investigators thoroughly searched Ryan's apartment, gathering every detail. At the same time, Police officers questioned Ryan's neighbors to see if they had any information that could help the case. One of Ryan's neighbors, a woman named Nikki, spoke to the detective and provided some useful insights. Nikki knew Shayna well and thought that Shayna was more committed to Ryan than he was to her. According to Nikki, the couple often had loud, angry arguments that disturbed the neighborhood. Nikki remembered a specific incident several months ago when Shayna came to her door in tears, saying she was afraid of Ryan. Shayna had told Nikki that she and Ryan had a violent fight, during which he lifted her up and threw her down the hallway, causing her injuries. Nikki believed Shayna and encouraged her to report the abuse to the police, but Shayna decided not to take legal action. At the police station, detectives took Shayna to an interrogation room to question her about the shooting of her boyfriend, Ryan. Before starting the interview, the officers read Shayna her Miranda rights, reminding her that she had the right to have an attorney present. Shayna chose to exercise this right and asked for a lawyer to be present. While waiting in the interrogation room, Shayna filled out some paperwork under the supervision of a detective. Despite having asked for a lawyer, Shayna still chatted with the detective. When asked who the victim was, Shayna calmly replied that it was the man she had killed. This response showed a clear lack of emotion, as it was obvious she knew the victim was Ryan, her long-term boyfriend. Shayna remained in the interrogation room with the detectives, maintaining that she had acted in self-defense. She recounted the events of the previous night, describing how Ryan had allegedly grabbed her by the throat and violently thrown her around the apartment. At some point during the investigation, the detective temporarily left the room, replaced by another officer. Shayna began to reveal more details about her encounter with Ryan to this new officer. She alleged that Ryan had been extremely aggressive prior to the shooting, hurling insults at her, calling her crazy, and taunting her while brandishing a gun. Shayna believed that Ryan's behavior that night was fueled by drug use, which contributed to his violent outbursts. Throughout the interview, Shayna consistently stuck to her version of the events that culminated in the shooting. She claimed that Ryan was sitting at the dining room table, handling ammunition for his Sig Sauer pistol, when she noticed him staring aggressively at her from across the table. At that moment, she became aware of his intentions and realized he was trying to evict her from his condo. Shayna confessed to picking up the gun and firing it in the midst of the chaos, hitting Ryan with a single bullet. Shayna continued to describe the incident, claiming that after shooting Ryan once, she saw him twitching. Believing it was necessary to end his suffering, she fired multiple shots, ultimately killing him. In her confession, Shayna told the detective that Ryan was vain and had mentioned wanting a nose job, so she decided to grant him his wish. She deliberately aimed her gun at his face and pulled the trigger, essentially giving him the rhinoplasty he had requested. During the intense interrogation, Shayna expressed deep concerns about the impact of the incident on her academic performance and her future romantic relationships. She confided in the detective that having a dead boyfriend would make it difficult for her to find someone to marry, especially if they discovered she had killed him in self-defense. Despite her statement, the detective arrested and charged her with Ryan's murder. Shayna seemed genuinely surprised by her arrest, maintaining that she had acted in self-defense. In 2015, Shayna's trial began, and the courtroom was filled with anticipation. The prosecutor compared Shayna to Jodi Arias, who had also been charged with murdering her boyfriend, Travis Alexander, emphasizing the striking similarities between the two cases. This heightened the tension in the courtroom as everyone awaited the outcome. The prosecutor argued that Shayna was fixated on her ex-boyfriend, Ryan. According to the prosecution, Ryan dominated Shayna's thoughts, and she constantly discussed him. During the trial, the prosecutor presented testimony from Ryan's friends, who described his plans to end the relationship with Shayna and his efforts to avoid her phone calls and messages. Despite this, Shayna continued to visit Ryan's condo in Highland Heights uninvited, including on the night of the murder. The prosecution introduced evidence that Ryan had scheduled a date with Audrey Bolt, a former Miss Ohio, on the night of the murder. This information supported the prosecution's theory that Shayna was driven by jealousy and anger towards Ryan's potential new love interest. Audrey Bolt testified that she was supposed to meet Ryan for drinks at a bar on the night of the murder, but he failed to appear. It wasn't until later that she learned of his murder. The prosecution also presented evidence that Ryan had repeatedly expressed his desire to end the relationship with Shayna in the days leading up to his death. Ryan had sought advice from his father, Jay, on how to handle the situation, and Jay had counseled him to be kind to Shayna to avoid a messy breakup. However, it appears that Shayna continued to exert control over Ryan on the day he was killed. The prosecution presented evidence of several text exchanges between Ryan and Shayna, in which Ryan clearly told her he did not want to see her that weekend because he had other commitments. Nevertheless, Shayna showed up uninvited at his condo, which was not unusual for her. The argument that ensued reached a boiling point when Ryan explicitly told Shayna their relationship was over and she could no longer control him. Prosecutors argued that this statement enraged Shayna, prompting her to pick up a gun and fatally shoot Ryan. During Shayna's trial for murdering Ryan, the prosecution showed a video of her being questioned by the police to suggest she was a cold-blooded killer. In the video, Shayna's calm behavior and responses seemed to back up the idea that she had intentionally taken Ryan's life. The footage showed her dancing and singing along to music, which seemed unusual for someone who had just killed their loved one in self-defense. Normally, people in such a situation would be distraught and crying due to the loss of life and the weight of their actions. The prosecution's goal in showing the video was to make Shayna appear detached and unemotional, implying that her actions were not those of someone who had acted in self-defense. They claimed that her lack of tears and carefree behavior proved her guilt. However, this interpretation was open to debate and up to the jury to decide. In the end, the video was a key piece of evidence in the prosecution's case against Shayna, but it was just one part of the evidence presented during the trial. Shayna's defense team stuck to a clear storyline throughout her trial, arguing that Ryan was the aggressive and violent one on the night of the incident, leading Shayna to shoot him. To back up this claim, they built a picture of Ryan's mental state, suggesting that a mix of drugs he was taking, including anti-anxiety medications and amphetamines, contributed significantly to his behavior. The defense team presented the jury with autopsy results showing the presence of these drugs in Ryan's system, strengthening their argument that the drugs influenced his actions. An expert toxicologist testified for Shayna, stating that a combination of drugs like anti-anxiety medications and amphetamines could cause someone to become violent and paranoid. This testimony aimed to provide a reasonable explanation for Shayna's actions, implying that she may not have intended to harm Ryan. During Shayna's trial in April 2015, the prosecution grew increasingly worried that she might be acquitted due to being a smart, young, and attractive woman, and that her self-defense claim might persuade the jury. However, on April 23rd, the jury delivered a guilty verdict, convicting Shayna of murdering her boyfriend, Ryan Poston. At the August 2015 sentencing hearing, Shayna persisted in shifting the blame for Ryan's death onto him, which infuriated his friends and family. Despite the overwhelming evidence presented during the trial, Shayna stuck to her claim of innocence and refused to acknowledge her role in the events. Under Kentucky law, a defendant who is deemed a victim of domestic violence can be eligible for early parole after serving just 20% of their sentence. However, the judge in this case ruled that Shayna did not meet the criteria, characterizing her crime as a premeditated murder. As a result, the judge handed down a 40-year prison sentence, making Shayna eligible for parole in 17 years, when she will be 41 years old in 2032. Shayna Hubers was sentenced, but she appealed for a new trial, which was granted by a judge in August 2016. The reason for the appeal was that one of the jurors had failed to disclose their felony conviction, which is against Kentucky law since felons are not allowed to serve on juries. Following a 4-month delay, Shayna's second trial for the murder of Ryan Poston began in August 2018. During the opening arguments, Shayna's defense attorney claimed that throughout her year-and-a-half-long relationship with Ryan, Shayna tried her best to make him happy. However, their romance suffered because of it. The attorney stated that on the very first night Shayna and Ryan met, he was violent toward her, both physically and sexually. This incident had a lasting effect on her, and it took her several weeks to respond to his messages after that. Shayna's defense lawyers claimed that her high school experience of sexual assault led to a history of alcohol abuse and promiscuity. They argued that this traumatic event contributed to her behavior on the night of the murder. The defense team aimed to create a sympathetic image of Shayna, highlighting her troubled past and arguing that she was not responsible for her actions on the night of the murder. They sought to challenge the prosecution's narrative, suggesting that her behavior was the result of a combination of factors, including a history of abuse and a toxic relationship with Ryan. The defense portrayed Shayna as a victim of domestic violence at Ryan's hands, rather than as a cold-blooded murderer. They claimed that her actions were driven not by a desire for revenge or financial gain, but by years of abuse by her former partner. According to the defense, Ryan constantly criticized Shayna about her weight and chest size, pressuring her to enlarge her breasts. This constant pressure contributed to her low self-esteem and feelings of inadequacy, the defense argued. The defense claimed that Ryan and Shayna's sexual relationship was troubled, marked by frequent disagreements and frustration from both parties. According to the defense, Ryan yearned for a more romantic and intimate connection, but this desire was not fulfilled, leading to a growing rift between them. To support this claim, the defense presented evidence that Shayna had sought an injection to improve her romantic life, which was meant to address the couple's sexual difficulties and strengthen their bond. However, the defense argued that Ryan's consistent rejection and disinterest worsened the strain on their relationship, causing Shayna to become increasingly frustrated and isolated. Moreover, the defense alleged that Ryan often broke up with Shayna, only to engage in conversations with other women. In contrast, the prosecution stated that while Ryan Poston was not a perfect boyfriend, he was not abusive. They argued that Shayna did not act in self-defense when she fatally shot Ryan, but rather because he had ended their relationship that night. The prosecution claimed that it was time for Ryan to break up with Shayna, as she refused to leave him alone despite the breakup, demonstrating her inability to move on from the relationship. One of Ryan's co-workers testified that the breakup between Ryan and Shayna would be permanent this time because Ryan had always avoided breaking up with Shayna in person. According to the co-worker, Shayna had made every effort to keep Ryan. The prosecution presented text messages in which Shayna told her friends that she and Ryan's romantic encounters had brought them closer together. However, Shayna testified that these encounters had actually driven them apart. In another text message exchange, Shayna asked Ryan for sex, but Ryan was taking antidepressants, which had reduced his sex drive due to the medication's side effects. However, when Shayna testified, she claimed that Ryan had forced her into sexual intercourse. After 5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Shayna guilty of murdering Ryan despite contradictory testimonies and conflicting evidence. During the sentencing hearing, Shayna's mother emotionally addressed the judge, sharing stories of her daughter's singing talent, which had earned her multiple college scholarships. Through tears, she begged the jury to consider granting Shayna parole, arguing that her daughter still had the potential to positively impact people's lives. The mother acknowledged, however, that her pleas did not minimize the grief and pain experienced by Ryan Poston's family. Shayna was given a life sentence with no chance of parole. As part of her sentence, she must serve at least 17 years before becoming eligible for parole in 2032. She is currently serving her sentence at the Kentucky Correctional Institute for Women in Pewee Valley, Kentucky. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Rebecca Payne. In Massachusetts on May 20th, 2008, at 6:30 a.m., the Boston police received a panicked call from the manager of the Parker Hill Apartments complex. The manager was extremely distraught, reporting that he had found a door ajar on the third floor, belonging to 22-year-old student Rebecca Payne. When he knocked on the door and called out her name, he received no response. This prompted him to enter the apartment, where he was met with a disturbing sight: dark red spots and streaks on the floor, leading him to one of the rooms. Inside, he found Rebecca's lifeless body, with her belongings scattered everywhere. The state of the room strongly suggested that her killer had been searching for something in her apartment. Rebecca Charlotte Payne was born on April 19, 1986, in New Milford, Connecticut, to Virginia and Nicholas Payne. She attended New Milford High School, where she excelled in sports, particularly field hockey, track, and tennis, before graduating in 2004. Rebecca then pursued a 5-year program in athletic training at Northeastern University in Boston, focusing on the care and prevention of athletic injuries. During her 4th year, she served on the Dean's Council and as president of the Athletic Training Club, playing a key role in organizing the university's Vision for the Future Athletic Training Leadership Forum. Additionally, she was involved with the Episcopal Lutheran Center. Known for her ability to connect with people from all walks of life, Rebecca had a large circle of friends and was always willing to lend a helping hand to those in need. When Rebecca was found dead in May 2008, her friends were shocked and couldn't comprehend who could have committed such a heinous act. The police investigation began when they arrived at the crime scene, and they quickly noticed that the front door showed no signs of forced entry. This led them to suspect that Rebecca might have known her killer, possibly even letting them into her apartment voluntarily. The apartment, situated on the 3rd floor, consisted of 2 bedrooms. In one of the bedrooms, Rebecca's lifeless body was found lying face down on the floor. The trail of blood from the living room to the bedroom where Rebecca lay suggested that the attack had begun in the living room. Further evidence, including casings found at the scene, supported this theory. Forensic examination revealed that Rebecca had been shot 5 times. The bloodstains in the apartment indicated that, although severely injured, Rebecca was conscious for a while and managed to crawl to the bedroom. However, she ultimately succumbed to her injuries there, exhausted and drained of her strength. The detectives sought to identify who could have perpetrated such cruelty against her. The police quickly dismissed the possibility that the incident was a botched theft, given that her valuables remained untouched. Although the apartment was in disarray, detectives believed the perpetrator intentionally created the mess to mislead them. However, it was also plausible that the disarray resulted from Rebecca's attempts to resist and fight for her life. When the investigators examined the apartment, they found that the balcony door was open, just like the front door. The 2nd bedroom showed signs that someone had been living there too. The identity of this person needed to be determined, as they could be the one who took Rebecca's life. Alternatively, if they weren't involved, they had to be ruled out as a suspect. After speaking with the manager, the detectives discovered that Rebecca didn't live alone. She shared an apartment with a fellow student. The police immediately began searching for this roommate. Meanwhile, they interviewed all residents of Parker Hill Apartments. The brutal murder of Rebecca, who had been shot 5 times, would have certainly generated significant noise. It was astonishing to the officers that multiple residents of the apartment complex reported hearing a woman's screams and gunfire between 3 and 4 a.m. Yet sadly, no one took the initiative to contact the police. It seemed that each individual assumed someone else would take responsibility and make the call. In psychology, the phenomenon where individuals are less likely to assist someone in distress when others are present is known as the bystander effect, or Genovese syndrome. This social psychological theory suggests that the presence of other people can inhibit an individual's willingness to help a victim. The term Genovese syndrome originates from a tragic incident that occurred on March 13, 1964, when 28-year-old Kitty Genovese was brutally murdered outside her apartment building in Kew Gardens, Queens, New York City. Although it was initially reported that 38 witnesses witnessed or heard the attack without calling the police or providing assistance, this portrayal has since been disputed as inaccurate. The case of Rebecca Payne led to an investigation into the social psychological phenomenon known as the bystander effect, or Genovese syndrome. What's truly shocking is that, unlike in the widely reported Kitty Genovese incident, Rebecca's neighbors actually did hear her screams and the sound of gunshots, yet still failed to call 911. This tragic event was a devastating loss for Rebecca's parents. They described their daughter as a driven and compassionate young woman who was loved by her friends. Rebecca was the kind of person who always put others first, giving selflessly from the heart. During the investigation, police interviewed a resident who lived on the first floor of the apartment complex where the crime took place. He reported seeing a black SUV approach the building at night, but due to the darkness, he was unable to make out the license plate or identify anyone getting out of the vehicle. The apartment building was equipped with surveillance cameras both inside and outside, which investigators hoped would provide crucial evidence. However, it emerged that the CCTV footage could only be viewed in real time, and recording it required inserting a video cassette into a VCR and pressing the record button, a step that unfortunately wasn't taken. Considering this information and the fact that the residential complex's manager discovered Rebecca's body, investigators began to suspect him of committing the crime. As a resident of the building, he had unrestricted access to Rebecca's apartment at all times. Furthermore, he was aware that no one monitored the surveillance cameras, which might have led him to wait until late at night to attack Rebecca for unknown reasons. The police sought to explore all possible scenarios. The police investigation into the manager gathered pace when they conducted a background check on him, which revealed a history of legal issues related to illegal substances. Furthermore, a thorough search of his apartment by the police turned up additional evidence. An officer noticed several dark red stains on the front door. The stains were swabbed by forensic experts and sent for further analysis. The apartment complex manager was taken in for police questioning. Investigators grilled him with questions, trying to determine if he was concealing information or would alter his story. However, he denied any involvement in Rebecca Payne's death, stating that he was in his apartment the entire night with his wife. The investigators then spoke with his wife, who corroborated her husband's alibi, confirming that he had indeed spent the entire night with her. The police released the suspect after a laboratory report confirmed the dark red stains on his apartment door were just paint, eliminating grounds for his arrest. During their investigation, detectives reviewed video and photo evidence from the scene, which led them to focus on a public transportation card. This card, used in the Boston area, stores data on each use, including the exact location and time. The transit police provided detectives with CCTV footage, which showed Rebecca using the card on her way home, appearing calm and alone, with no one following her. Unfortunately, this footage did not help identify any potential suspects. A few days later, investigators obtained another surveillance video from a camera outside the hospital building near the Parker Hill Apartments. The recording showed a black SUV passing by around the same time as the attack on Rebecca. The vehicle matched the witness's description, but the poor quality of the footage made it impossible to read the license plates. However, investigators were able to conclude that the car was a Ford. After identifying Rebecca's roommate, the detectives brought her in for questioning to determine if she had any connection to the incident. They wanted to know if she had any information about the events surrounding Rebecca's death. The roommate, claimed to be shocked by the news and explained that she had moved back in with her parents to study for an exam. When her parents corroborated her alibi, she was cleared as a suspect. Although the conversation didn't reveal any direct evidence, the roommate did provide a useful lead. She mentioned that Rebecca's boyfriend, Matt, also a fellow student, had access to their apartment. Matt's motive for taking Rebecca's life was a crucial question investigators had to answer. They reached out to Matt by phone and learned he had moved to New York State to live with his parents around the time Rebecca was attacked. Matt claimed to be depressed over his girlfriend's death, but his distress might have been an act. Matt said he was staying with his parents, and they corroborated his alibi when shown a printout of his cell phone's call history. Investigators discovered Matt had spoken to Rebecca around midnight, mere hours before her death. However, the cell tower that received the signal from Matt's phone was located near his parents' house in New York State. Through an experiment, investigators determined that Matt wouldn't have had enough time to drive from his parents' house to Boston in 3 or 4 hours to commit the crime. As a result, Matt was also cleared from the list of suspects. Family and friends were gathered at Rebecca's home in Connecticut, bidding her a final farewell. But the police investigation had stalled due to a lack of evidence, new witnesses, and DNA samples. The case had reached a dead end. Nicholas Payne expressed the sentiments of those who loved her. "We're left to mourn the loss of Rebecca, knowing we'll never again hear her laughter or share in her life's adventures and progress. All of that has been taken from us." As the years went by, Rebecca's parents continued to wait in vain for answers about their daughter's death, which remained a mystery. However, a surprising breakthrough occurred in 2012. Anthony White, a man, was arrested by the Boston police for dealing illegal substances. With the threat of a lengthy prison sentence looming, White proposed a deal to the investigators. In exchange for a shorter sentence, he would provide information about the night Rebecca Payne died. Recognizing this as a potential opportunity to finally crack the long-dormant case, the investigators accepted White's offer. After consulting with the prosecutor, White reported that on May 20th, 2008, he received a contact from an acquaintance, Cornell Smith, who was also involved in illegal drug dealing. Smith requested a meeting with White and arrived accompanied by their mutual friend, Michael Balba, who drove a black SUV. The three of them proceeded to the Parker Hill Apartments, where Balba parked his vehicle to observe the activities taking place inside. According to White, Cornell Smith spotted Rebecca in a third-floor window and exclaimed, "That's her." They waited until the lights in Rebecca's apartment went dark. Then Smith climbed from the first-floor balcony to the second and finally the third floor. Since the balcony door was open, he entered the apartment. However, Rebecca wasn't asleep. Instead, she was lying on the living room couch. When she saw the intruder, she began screaming, and a brief struggle followed. Smith then fired 5 shots at her and exited through the front door, after which they drove away. The investigators were skeptical of White's testimony, believing he had made up the story to get a shorter prison sentence. They couldn't figure out why Cornell Smith would want to kill Rebecca, who was not involved in his world in any way. What White said next shocked and disturbed the officers greatly. According to him, Rebecca's death was a tragic case of mistaken identity. 2 sisters, who closely resembled each other, lived on the first floor of the Parker Hill Apartments, and one of them bore a striking similarity to Rebecca. These sisters were not only rivals of Smith's, but also involved in the illegal drug trade. Smith believed he had been wrongly arrested due to their illicit activities and sought revenge. Although he knew they resided in the Parker Hill Apartments, he was unaware of their specific floor or apartment number. When he spotted Rebecca in the window, he mistakenly identified her as one of the sisters he sought to harm. Investigators determined that Cornell Smith had been arrested in February 2008 for illegally selling drugs, but he was freed on bail just before Rebecca's death occurred. He subsequently sought revenge against the sisters, whom he mistakenly blamed for his arrest. By 2012, Anthony White had shared his information with investigators, but Cornell Smith was already serving a 12-year sentence for selling illegal drugs, a conviction he received 2 years prior. Following White's testimony, Smith was subsequently charged with Rebecca's murder, despite his denial of any involvement. However, before Smith's court appearance, the prosecution team received a severe blow. Their key witness, Anthony White, had died in prison. This was a significant setback because, aside from White's testimony, there was no physical evidence directly linking Smith to Rebecca Payne's apartment. Hoping to finally bring Cornell Smith to justice, investigators pored over his court file on drug trafficking and were shocked to discover incriminating letters he had written to the presiding judge. In these letters, Cornell Smith came across as arrogant, looking down on others. Although some of the letters made no sense, one of them contained a crucial piece of evidence that would ultimately be his downfall. It's noteworthy that it's unclear why these letters went unnoticed earlier, especially since they were addressed to the judge. In one of the letters, Smith wrote in anger about an earlier altercation that had taken place downtown Boston. This letter described an event that ultimately led to the unfortunate death of Rebecca Payne at the hands of Cornell Allen Smith Sr. Notably, the letter confirmed that Smith was in her apartment at the time of her death. The trial of Cornell Smith took place in 2015. Throughout the proceedings, from the start of the trial to the sentencing, the district attorney maintained that Rebecca Payne was an innocent victim who had no involvement with Smith or Balba. Over the course of the trial, Smith went through 3 lawyers. His first lawyer, Jeffrey Karp, a seasoned defense attorney with over 20 years of experience, withdrew from the case after Smith assaulted him during a preliminary hearing at the Suffolk County Superior Court in Massachusetts. In a shocking and unprovoked attack, Smith suddenly stood up and struck Karp on the head with his handcuffed hand. According to Nicholas Payne, this incident demonstrated the kind of person Smith is. Notwithstanding the assault, Karp declined to press charges against Smith, leaving it to the judge to appoint a new attorney to represent him. Cornell Smith pleaded guilty to the involuntary deprivation of Rebecca Payne's life and was sentenced to serve between 18 and 20 years in prison. Before passing sentence, the judge instructed Smith to turn and face Rebecca's friends and family, telling him that they represented the pain caused by his actions. In memory of Rebecca, her hometown has named its local tennis courts, a garden, and a National Athletic Trainers Association scholarship fund after her. Her father, Nicholas Payne, said they wanted to ensure she would not be forgotten. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Emily Longley. Emily Longley was born in 1994 in England to Mark and Caroline Longley. 2 years later, her parents had another child, a younger sister named Hannah. From a very early age, the sisters developed a strong bond and grew up in a loving and caring family environment. When Emily turned 9 and Hannah was 7, the entire family relocated to New Zealand, making Auckland their new home. However, after moving to New Zealand, Emily began associating with an undesirable group of people. Concerned about her influence, her middle-class parents made the decision to send her back to the UK in 2010 to live with her grandparents and start anew. Emily moved to England to pursue her studies at Brockenhurst College, where she aimed to earn a business degree and harbored ambitions of becoming a model. During her time in England, she resided at her grandparents' house in Bournemouth, a popular seaside resort town located in the county of Dorset on the English Channel coast. While in England, Emily met 20-year-old Elliot Turner, who made a strong impression on her. Their communication gradually developed into a romantic relationship. In April 2011, Emily returned to New Zealand to visit her family, whom she hadn't seen for about 6 months. Her father picked her up from the airport, and Emily greeted him enthusiastically, giving him a tight hug and telling him how much she'd missed him. Emily was extremely close to her father, who adored her and missed her cheerful smile, infectious laughter, and playful dirty jokes. The next day, the whole family visited Emily's favorite pizzeria. She filled her parents in on her college life, mentioning her modeling career and the wonderful friends she'd made. She also talked about her boyfriend, Elliot Turner, and casually mentioned that she was considering ending their relationship when she got back to England, as she felt too young for something serious at that point. Emily spent the next few weeks socializing with friends and family, having a wonderful time without arousing any suspicion that she would be leaving soon. When the time came for her flight to board, she found it difficult to bid farewell to her family. However, she made a promise to return in 5 months to watch the Rugby World Cup matches, which were scheduled to begin on September 9th. A few days later, while texting her father, Emily mentioned that she had broken up with Elliot, but she didn't elaborate on the details. The reason behind the breakup was that Elliot had seen the photos Emily had posted on social media while she was in New Zealand, which showed her with other guys, and he became extremely jealous. Elliot Turner, son of a wealthy jeweler, was living a seemingly carefree life at 20 years old. He was a familiar face in Bournemouth's local bar and club scene, where he was part of a group of affluent young men known as the Firm. His friends nicknamed him All Talk Turner, due to his boasts. In December 2010, he met Emily, and the couple indulged in the resort's high life, often staying out late into the night. However, Turner's history of obsessing over women soon resurfaced, and his jealousy sparked violent arguments in the relationship. Those who knew him described Turner as having a threatening, aggressive, violent, controlling, and possessive nature. In January 2008, 16-year-old Elliot Turner received a police harassment warning for relentlessly sending text messages and emails to his ex-girlfriend after she ended their relationship. With a sense of entitlement and no need to work thanks to his parents' financial support, Turner thrived on being the center of attention. He was skilled at manipulating people, including his parents, and his life revolved around parties, women, alcohol, and illegal substances. Turner had an inflated sense of self-importance, often carrying a hammer as a symbol of power and control. His friends believed he fancied himself a gangster, seeking to become the go-to person for help and admiration. He would often buy drinks for everyone at the bar, though his flashy new Mini Cooper was actually a gift from his grandmother. Turner struggled to maintain his tough guy image, frequently posting boastful, street-smart messages on social media, where he referred to himself as Scarface or God. He had no shortage of female admirers, but when he met Emily, he formed a strong attachment to her. She reinforced the image of himself as a successful person, an image he had worked hard to cultivate. As their relationship progressed, Turner began to exhibit controlling behavior more frequently. He even made a disturbing threat, telling Emily he would take her life in an emotional outburst. In a note to him a few months before her death, Emily wrote a list of 4 requests. Firstly, her love for him. Secondly, a plea to stop making threats on her life. Thirdly, a request to refrain from discussing his ex-girlfriends. And lastly, a desire for him to tone down his aggressive behavior, be cooler and less intimidating, as it was causing her fear. When Emily realized that Turner's controlling behavior had become unbearable, she knew she had to end the relationship. People like Turner, however, rarely accept rejection. On the evening of May 6, 2011, Emily went to a nightclub with her friends, unaware that Turner had been monitoring her Facebook messages. He discovered that she was seeing someone else, which enraged him. Turner stormed into the club and confronted Emily, sparking an argument. The situation escalated when Emily threw her drink in his face. Turner responded by harassing her verbally and making violent threats. He also criticized her outfit, claiming it was too provocative. Despite Emily's attempts to break free, Turner refused to accept that their relationship was over. Elliot ruined her evening, so she decided to leave, yet her ex-boyfriend followed her. His friends heard him say, "I will kill her," I will go to prison for it and still be a millionaire. I would do 10 years, it wouldn't bother me. Turner caught up with Emily, somehow persuading her to go to his house. He said he wanted to talk in a more relaxed atmosphere. Elliot Turner lived with his parents. Perhaps that's why Emily went with him. Maybe she thought he would behave more calmly in the presence of his parents. Neighbors saw them go inside the house. Anita Turner, Elliot's mother, called the emergency service the next morning, saying Emily wouldn't wake up. At around 9 a.m., Anita received instructions from the operator on how to assist Emily while waiting for the ambulance to arrive. However, when the ambulance finally arrived, the paramedics were only able to pronounce Emily Longley dead. Anita, an Indonesian citizen, had moved to the UK to marry Lee Turner, and the couple had a son together. In hindsight, they had spoiled their son, which proved to be a mistake. During Anita's conversation with the emergency services operator, her voice lacked the emotional distress expected of a mother who had just discovered her son's girlfriend's lifeless body. Instead, she sounded eerily calm, as if the situation was normal. In New Zealand, thousands of miles from England, Emily's father, Mark, woke up at 2 a.m. to find multiple missed calls from his ex-wife Caroline and younger daughter Hannah. A voicemail from Hannah was also waiting, but Mark struggled to decipher what she was saying. Then he heard Caroline's scream in the background, followed by the devastating words, "Emily is dead." Mark refused to accept it. He immediately called his mother in England, and when she answered, her uncontrollable crying shattered his world. Moments later, a police officer took the phone and delivered the tragic news. "I'm sorry to tell you that your daughter Emily has passed away." Still in denial, Mark couldn't process the news, remembering how Emily had been sitting on his couch with a smile just a week prior. Flying to the UK, the grief-stricken father struggled to come to terms with the devastating news that his daughter was dead. But the harsh reality was that it wasn't just a terrible dream. The loss of their eldest daughter was a profoundly distressing experience for Emily's parents. The police informed them that Emily had passed away peacefully in her sleep, a revelation that was utterly incomprehensible. She was, after all, young and healthy. The police gathered some evidence, but the circumstances surrounding Emily's death remained shrouded in mystery. They had to patiently wait for the autopsy results to shed some light on the tragedy. Elliot Turner's parents, Anita and Lee, claimed to investigators that they had spent the entire night at home and hadn't heard a sound. However, Elliot's actions raised suspicions. He openly grieved Emily's loss by posting photos of the two of them together on his Facebook page. Since the police lacked concrete evidence to disprove Elliot's and his parents' story, they were unable to contest the claim that Emily had died mysteriously in her sleep. During the investigation of any death, determining the cause of death is the primary concern. Once investigators establish the cause of death, they understand the nature of the case and how to proceed with the investigation. Prior to receiving the autopsy results, investigators discovered a disturbing Facebook post made by Emily a few days before her death. On Thursday, May 5th, Emily wrote, "I have a stalker. I recently received a strange phone call where the caller claimed to know everything about me. When I asked how they obtained my number, they replied, 'I'll tell you when I see you.' They continued to ask me out and wouldn't stop calling. I eventually hung up on them." At the same time, investigators discovered that Emily had a public argument with Elliot Turner at a nightclub, witnessed by other patrons, before her death. Further inquiry revealed that Turner's friends knew he was possessive and controlling, constantly monitoring Emily's actions. They were aware that Turner had discovered Emily's secret meeting with another man and had repeatedly threatened to kill her. However, his friends downplayed these threats, thinking they were just a ploy to boost Turner's street credibility. The autopsy results did not provide a definitive cause of Emily's death, although experts suggested strangulation as a possible explanation, citing physical findings consistent with neck compression. Investigators suspected that one of the Turner family members might be involved in her death, leading them to install listening devices in the Turner household. Their goal was to uncover any potential secrets or miscommunications within the family. As it turned out, their suspicions were well-founded. Elliot Turner coached his mother on how to respond to police questioning, dictating what she should say. His father, Lee Turner, initially seemed to recognize the impropriety of his son's actions, but eventually surrendered to the will of his son and wife. During the trial, Elliot Turner confessed to causing Emily's death, claiming he acted in self-defense after a violent confrontation in his bedroom. He alleged that, during the altercation, he was forced to grab Emily by the neck, but denied strangling her. According to his account, he discovered her lifeless body in his bed the following morning. Elliot Turner confessed to threatening Emily and feeling upset and deceived on the evening preceding her death. According to him, Emily initiated a physical altercation, and in response he grabbed her by the neck to restrain her. He stated that he held her in this position for approximately 5 to 6 seconds before releasing her. Emily's father, Mark, reflected on the difficulty of losing his daughter. He explained that coping with death is never easy, and every anniversary is a painful reminder, especially birthdays, Christmas, and Easter, which were the last times he truly spent quality time with her. Mark painfully admitted that the hardest aspect for him was that he would never get to see the woman Emily could have become. He missed witnessing the life she was deprived of and the woman she was growing into, which he was extremely proud of. As her father, Mark acknowledged his bias, but genuinely believed that the world was a better place with Emily in it, and certainly more enjoyable. During the trial, Elliot Turner was depicted as a spoiled, affluent youngster whose parents attempted to help him evade punishment. The court learned that Elliot was given complete freedom in his family's luxurious home, where he would host wild parties for his friends from middle-class backgrounds. His father, Lee, described Elliot as unruly, and to minimize disturbances, gave him his own living space in the converted garage, allowing him to come and go as he pleased. It was in this room, equipped with a minibar, that Elliot strangled Emily to death on his bed. The police discovered search queries on his seized computers regarding death by strangulation and methods to avoid punishment for a crime. The primary motive was revealed to be jealousy, as the court heard testimony that Elliot discovered Emily had spent the night with another man while he was in custody. Elliot boasted that the jury would believe his twisted story that Emily had attacked him, and he acted in self-defense when he strangled her in a fit of jealousy. In letters from prison, he planned to sell the rights to his story, drive a new Range Rover, and move to Spain to live a fashionable life. However, the jury quickly shattered his illusions, finding him guilty. On May 22, 2012, the court sentenced Elliot Turner to life in prison with a minimum term of 16 years. The judge described him as a man of striking arrogance, stating that Emily was a lovely, kind, fun-loving girl whose light had been suddenly and needlessly extinguished by Elliot, who did not truly love her but saw her as a trophy to control. Elliot's parents, Anita and Lee Turner, were also on trial. They tried to cover up their son's crime, with Lee destroying Elliot's confession letter and Anita postponing the ambulance call to allow their son to cover his tracks. When asked why she did not call an ambulance, Anita Turner replied that she did not believe Emily was dead. Both Anita and Lee were found guilty of perverting the course of justice and sentenced to 27 months in prison. The judge said they chose to fight the case, showing little remorse, and the anguished tone of Lee's voice on the recorded tape revealed their guilt. After serving their sentence, they still live in the house where Emily Longley died. Emily's dad, Mark, broke down as he spoke about the verdicts, supported by his former wife Caroline and daughter Hannah. He said the revelations over the past 5 weeks have shocked and disgusted them, and that a man as evil as Turner could treat a gentle and loving girl like Emily so violently is beyond belief. They are proud that Emily had come halfway around the world to build a better life for herself, which Turner decided to end. Mark said there was a lot of talk about Turner's boasting and that no one had taken his threat seriously until it was too late. He added that even Turner's mother did not take it seriously when he texted her to say he was going to break Emily's neck. Perhaps if someone had taken his threat seriously, Emily might be with them today. Mark hopes Turner suffers every day in prison for what he has done. In October 2020, it was reported that Elliot Turner was attacked by his cellmates in prison. This occurred after he displayed photos of Emily in his cell and bragged about receiving letters from female admirers. His boasting about his anticipated return to a luxurious lifestyle, complete with champagne, Bentley cars, and numerous women, angered his cellmates and prompted the attack. Despite this, Turner will be eligible to apply for early release from prison, and it is hoped that the parole board will exercise sound judgment and make a prudent decision regarding an individual who still shows no remorse for his actions. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Brittany Gregory. Brittany Gregory was born on April 1, 1988, in Brick Township, the youngest of 5 children in her family. When her parents divorced, she went to live with her father, but remained close to her siblings, particularly her sister Brianna, who was 4 years older. In school, Brittany was an outstanding student, and her teachers believed she had the potential to become a scholar. However, her unusual dream was to become a forensic scientist and study crime scene evidence. As the baby of the family, Brittany relished the extra attention she received. Her mother acknowledged that she was spoiled, but not vain or arrogant. For her 16th birthday in April, she held her mother to a promise to let her get her belly button pierced. Brittany was a big fan of pop star Britney Spears and had posters of her in her bedroom. She enjoyed watching cartoons, especially SpongeBob SquarePants. Her fascination with forensic science led her to watch TV shows about the subject, a profession she wanted to pursue. Brittany and her mother would often watch the same shows together and then call each other to discuss them. In 2004, Brittany, 16, and her sister, Brianna, 20, lived with their father, Joe Dunn, and his new girlfriend, Lori Peterson, in a small house close to their school. Located at the end of the street, the house was near a wooded area. At that time, Brittany had been dating John Fitzgerald, 18, for almost 2 years. He was a nice guy who had the approval of Brittany's family, and they had a very warm relationship, making them seem like the perfect couple. On Sunday, July 11, 2004, Brittany's mother, Deborah, and her sister Brianna drove to South Toms River, about 15 miles from Brittany's home, to visit her older brother and his wife, who had recently had a baby girl. That evening, around 8:30 p.m., Brittany called her mother on her cell phone, asking for a ride to her boyfriend John's house. Brittany sounded very upset, suggesting there might be trouble. Her mother explained that she was out of town and couldn't drive her, but said that her sister Brianna could arrive in about an hour. Brittany agreed to wait. About 45 minutes after Brittany phoned, Brianna was finally free to call her back, but Brittany didn't pick up. Brianna assumed that Brittany must be sleeping or that someone had taken her to John's, which is why she wasn't answering. However, when Brianna got back home the next morning, she was surprised to find that Brittany was nowhere to be found, although all of her belongings, including her phone, were still at the house. Brianna suspected that Brittany might have spent the night at her boyfriend's house, but it was unusual that she hadn't mentioned it to anyone and had left her cell phone behind. This wasn't typical of Brittany. Seeking answers, Brianna began calling all of Brittany's friends to see if anyone had information about her whereabouts, but none of them knew anything. After failing to reach her sister, Brianna decided to call John, who told her he last spoke to Brittany on Sunday morning, and they hadn't been in touch since. Lori Peterson, a family friend who lived with the girls, reported that she returned home around 10 p.m. on Sunday night, but Brittany was nowhere to be found. Brianna immediately sensed something was wrong and went to the police station to file a missing persons report. At first, the police were skeptical, thinking Brittany had likely run away or was out with friends. However, Brianna convinced them that she had already contacted all of Brittany's friends and her boyfriend, and none of them knew her whereabouts. Brianna was certain her sister wouldn't run away from home because she was an exemplary student who spent most of her time in the library. Brittany always notified her family before leaving the house, and all her belongings, including her money and phone, were left behind. After Brianna persuaded the police that her sister couldn't have disappeared on her own, they launched an investigation. The officers first searched Brittany's room at home, inspecting her belongings, including her purse with her phone, ID, and makeup. Although they didn't find any suspicious evidence, they still interviewed everyone living in the house and ruled out the possibility that someone close to Brittany was involved in her disappearance. The police launched a thorough search of the area surrounding the house, checking every nearby residence, scouring the property, and interviewing neighbors. Their goal was to find potential witnesses who might have seen or heard anything unusual. As they surveyed the scene, they noted the house's location at the end of the street, as well as the wooded area directly across the street. During their canvassing, none of the neighbors reported anything suspicious, except for one woman who recalled seeing Brittany walking down the street toward her own house late on Friday night, when it was already dark. Although this sighting occurred 2 days before Brittany's disappearance, investigators took note of it, recognizing it as a curious detail that didn't quite fit the image of the modest, bookish girl who rarely ventured out without her parents' permission. This raised questions. What had prompted Brittany to venture out so late, and was she actually allowed to do so? The police were eager to determine whether Brittany was as innocent and homebound as her sister had described her. Numerous police interviews with Brittany's family, neighbors, and teachers revealed that everyone spoke highly of her, with no one having anything bad to say. In her conversation with the police, Brianna mentioned that Brittany and her boyfriend, John, had a strained relationship lately with frequent arguing. On the day of her disappearance, the couple had another fight, leaving Brittany upset and wanting to visit John that evening to make amends. As a result of their investigation, the detectives decided to scrutinize John's alibi more thoroughly. They asked him to come to the police station to determine if he had seen Brittany on the day she vanished. John stated that his last phone conversation with Brittany was on Sunday morning when he was at the beach with friends. At that time, Brittany was upset that he had gone without her, and they had an argument. They hadn't spoken since then. John also revealed that he had ended their relationship a few days prior, but she couldn't accept it, even though she knew he was already dating another girl. John claimed he had no plans to meet Brittany that night and wasn't aware she was coming to his house. The reason for their breakup was a rumor that Brittany had kissed another guy at a party. Although John didn't see it himself, he decided to end the relationship and started dating another girl. John last saw Brittany on July 10th, the day before she disappeared, when she gave him a letter expressing her desire to reconcile. The detectives asked John for permission to review the letter Brittany had written, and he handed it over. In the letter, Brittany apologized for her behavior and for breaking John's heart. She also asked him to remain friends. John seemed genuinely concerned and worried that Brittany hadn't been found yet. The police had no evidence linking John to Brittany's disappearance, and after he passed a lie detector test, he was cleared of suspicion. However, John did tell detectives one important detail. He said that Brittany often came to his house through the woods behind her father's house. The story of Brittany's disappearance grew increasingly complex. Detectives started to speculate whether Brittany had attempted to reach John's house, about a mile from her father's house, by walking through the woods that night. Given the darkness, she could have easily gotten lost or encountered difficulties along the way. The police launched a search in the woods, focusing on the path that began near her house and which she likely took. Walking in the woods at night, was frightening and perilous, raising the question of why a young girl like Brittany wasn't intimidated by the prospect. The forest search continued for 3 days, but yielded no results. Just when the investigation seemed stuck, a woman came forward who had been with her brother in a nearby park on the night Brittany vanished. The park was quiet and deserted, with no cars present, except for a distinctive Chevrolet pickup truck that drove by. The woman noticed the truck, even recalling its license plate. Following a thorough investigation, authorities discovered the truck was registered to 23-year-old Anthony Geiger. To establish a connection between Anthony and Brittany's disappearance, police delved into his past, revealing that he was the former boyfriend of Brittany's sister, Bobby Joe. Bobby Joe explained to detectives that she and Anthony split about a month prior due to his excessive jealousy and obsessive focus on her sister Brittany. She suspected Anthony, 23, harbored feelings for Brittany, which led her to ultimately terminate their relationship. Brittany's friends recalled that Anthony always had a strange way of looking at her and would frequently try to flirt with her. The most recent instance of this behavior was at lunch, where Anthony once again attempted to flirt with Brittany. As a result, detectives began to suspect Anthony of kidnapping Brittany and decided to bring him in for questioning. During the interrogation, Anthony claimed that he was not in the area where Brittany lived on the evening of July 11th. He stated that he didn't arrive until the next day, July 12th, by which time the police had already started searching for the missing girl. Anthony admitted to being on good terms with Brittany and seeing her at social gatherings, but maintained that they were just friends and that he never flirted with her. He also stated that he was aware that Brittany was too young for him and that his feelings towards her were purely platonic. Anthony testified that he spent the evening of July 11th at home with his new girlfriend, who corroborated his alibi. Despite this, investigators remained suspicious of Anthony, partly because his residence was near Brittany's home. Investigators went back to examine the letter Brittany had written to John and noticed disturbing signs that she was saying goodbye to her loved one. They began to fear that Brittany might be hurting herself after breaking off her relationship with her boyfriend. However, Brittany's parents rejected this version, believing that their daughter was smart and determined and would not give up her grand plans because of her breakup with her boyfriend. They believed Brittany was too in love with life. After the investigation stalled once more, the police turned to the media to seek help from the public in finding potential witnesses. To bolster their efforts, officers from other areas joined the investigation. Frustrated with waiting, Brittany's parents took an active role in the search, going door to door in the neighborhood, asking questions, although this approach yielded no results. The police refocused their attention on Brittany's home, where everything began. Even if she had indeed walked through the woods to meet her boyfriend, it was puzzling that she had left her phone behind in her room. Could someone have abducted her from the house itself? If so, was it someone she knew and trusted? During a meticulous search of the house, the police discovered a crucial piece of evidence in Brittany's room: her personal diary, containing a handwritten letter. The contents of this letter proved vital to the investigation, lifting the shroud of secrecy surrounding the family's relationships. Brittany wrote about her life in a letter, describing her relationships with friends and her boyfriend, as well as her schooling. She also shared details about her family, explaining that it was dysfunctional. Every Sunday, she visited her older brother, who was in jail. Her mother was a drug addict who had abandoned her when she was just 9 years old. Now Brittany lived with her father, with whom she was not close, and his girlfriends. Brittany admitted that she wasn't perfect and had done things she wasn't proud of. However, she was determined not to follow in her parents' footsteps and wanted to succeed in life. Her dream was to become a forensic scientist and help solve crimes. After reading the letter, the police widened their search to include Brittany's family, who had not previously been suspected. Detectives began investigating each family member and discovered that a male massage parlor was operating from Brittany's home. Lori Peterson, a friend of Brittany's father, was offering intimate services to different men every day, masquerading as a massage therapist. Neighbors were aware of this, and Lori herself didn't hide it, distributing business cards in the area. Neighbors reported that Brittany's father's house was a frequent gathering spot for suspicious individuals who would use illegal substances. This led the police to believe that the home environment was dysfunctional. Multiple men, mostly unknown to Lori, would visit her for her services, raising the possibility that one of them might have kidnapped Brittany from the house. Over 100 police officers worked to identify everyone who had visited Joe Dunn's house in the past month, a challenging task. A week after Brittany's disappearance on July 18th, the police announced they had arrested a murder suspect, stunning Brittany's family, who were still searching for her since her body had not been found. When Brittany's mother, Deborah, saw a picture of the suspect on television, she recognized him as her longtime friend, 38-year-old Jack Jr. He had been a close family friend for 20 years, attending all their family gatherings. In fact, his daughter was engaged to Brittany's brother, who was currently in prison. Deborah was stunned, unable to comprehend how Jack could be involved in Brittany's case, given his close relationship with their family and his children's friendship with Brittany. Despite this, they still held out hope that Brittany was alive. However, court records and interviews revealed that Jack was a hardened criminal with a history of threatening his neighbors throughout his adult life. He had been arrested over a dozen times in the last 10 years alone and had served time in state prison for theft and parole violations. His numerous crimes included breaking into cars, houses, and garden sheds, as well as drug use and sales. He had even threatened a man with a baseball bat and fought with police. Many of his offenses went unreported, as people were afraid of him. The last time Jack was sentenced, he received 5.5 years in prison and was released just a year before Brittany's disappearance. Although Brittany's parents suspected that Jack might steal from them to fund his drug habit, they never thought he was capable of harming their daughter. After Jack's arrest, the details of how the police connected him to Brittany's disappearance came to light. It started with a call to the police station. The caller reported that a few days prior he had met Jack, who had confided in him about back pain he was experiencing due to burying a girl's body in sandy soil. Jack boasted that the burial site would never be discovered and asked for advice on how deep to bury the body to avoid attracting animals. The police asked the informant to come to the station and suggested he wear a wire to meet with Jack. Jack questioned him about the crimes, including the murder. The informant agreed, and during the meeting, Jack revealed that he had buried the girl's body in a secluded area, claiming it would never be found. Although he admitted to committing the murder, he refrained from mentioning Brittany's name. In addition, Jack revealed his intention to eliminate someone who possessed too much knowledge, gesturing towards his friend Tommy, who was present in the car but didn't overhear the conversation. This led the detectives to believe that Tommy held crucial information that could crack the case, since Jack wouldn't have wanted to silence him otherwise. The detectives brought Tommy in for questioning at the station, but he refused to cooperate, claiming he knew nothing. However, the detectives were certain he was lying, and to prove their point, they played a recording of Jack stating he wanted to kill Tommy due to his knowledge. Realizing he was in danger, Tommy decided to collaborate with the authorities. According to Tommy, on the night Brittany vanished, he and Jack were driving around the neighborhood, smoking crack. They stopped in front of Brittany's house, and Jack decided to enter the house to discuss some matters with her father. When he entered, the house was empty except for Brittany. 5 minutes later, Jack returned to the car with Brittany, who sat in the back seat. Tommy was perplexed and asked what was happening, but Brittany remained silent, gazing downward. Jack informed him that he would take Tommy home. Tommy alleged that Jack drove him home, and when he exited the car, Brittany, who was sitting in the back, also got out and moved to the front passenger seat. Subsequently, Tommy and Jack drove away. The next day, when they met again, Jack didn't mention the previous day's events. They stopped at a car wash, where Jack gave his car an unusually thorough cleaning, washing both the interior and exterior. The car wash attendant joked about this, but Jack became angry, warning him to mind his own business or face the consequences. Tommy later explained that when he heard about Brittany's disappearance, he suspected Jack might be involved. He asked Jack directly what he had done with the girl. Jack became furious at the question, claiming he had simply driven her home and left. He rudely told Tommy not to ask again if he didn't want trouble. Tommy assumed that Jack had taken Brittany to the woods to rape her, believing that Jack had originally planned to use Lori's intimate services that night, but was thwarted when she wasn't at home. The detectives knew they had found their man when they arrived to arrest Jack. He was holding a can of gasoline, looking like he was about to set his car on fire, likely to destroy evidence. A search of the car revealed bloodstains, which forensic tests confirmed belonged to Brittany. Further investigation showed that Jack had visited a car wash after being with Brittany, and the police seized the vacuum cleaner he used. Criminologists found sand particles stuck together with Brittany's blood inside the vacuum, leaving no doubt about its origin. Although the police had gathered strong evidence, Jack refused to admit to kidnapping and murdering Brittany and remained silent about the case. The detectives interviewed Jack's acquaintances, and most of them believed he was capable of murder, describing him as a man who would stop at nothing. Despite being unemployed, Jack always seemed to have money. During the investigation, a patrol officer reported seeing a car parked on the side of the road near the woods on the night of Brittany's disappearance. The car belonged to Jack. At the time, the officer was unaware that Brittany was missing. When questioned, Jack claimed he was searching for his dog, which had run off into the woods. This information led the search for Brittany's body to focus on the area where the officer spotted Jack's car. Despite an extensive search involving police officers, K-9 units, helicopters, and volunteers, no body was found. Investigators theorized that Brittany, desperate for a ride to her boyfriend's house that night, asked Jack for a lift when he arrived at her home. Jack agreed to drive her, but instead, he took his friend Tommy home and then raped and killed Brittany, taking advantage of the situation. To prove this, however, the police needed to find her body. As the police attempted to question Jack and obtain a confession, a new witness emerged. A woman with a troubled past, who had previously been held hostage by Jack for months, called the police. She claimed that if Jack was indeed responsible for Brittany's murder, she might know where he had hidden her body. During her captivity, she had gained intimate knowledge of Jack's habits, frequent haunts, and secrets, which she was willing to share with the police. One day, a woman recounted how the suspect had shown her a location near a power line and told her it was an ideal spot to bury a body, as it was unlikely anyone would ever find it. Initially, the detectives were skeptical, but they began questioning her. She described the site as being in Lakewood, with sandy soil. This detail sparked a memory for the police, as an informant had previously mentioned that the suspect had complained about the difficulty of burying a body in sandy soil. The authorities decided to search the area the woman had described, which was just 3 miles from Brittany's home. Despite conducting an extensive search over several days, they found nothing. However, they persisted, motivated by the similarity between the sand found in the vacuum cleaner used by the suspect at the car wash and the soil in the area. Over 100 people searched the dense forest on the border of Monmouth and Ocean counties daily. Finally, on Tuesday, July 27, 2004, 15 days after Brittany was reported missing, her grave was discovered. 3 New Jersey K-9 officers, who had joined the search on the weekend, found her body. The naked body of the young girl was found in a hole, with a necklace bearing her name hanging around her neck. The detectives immediately confirmed it was Brittany's body. The medical examiner performed an autopsy but was unable to determine the exact cause of death due to the decomposition of the body over 2 weeks. The examiner could not rule out strangulation or suffocation, as Brittany had suffered both head trauma and strangulation. Brittany's body showed no clear signs of sexual assault, although the medical examiner did not exclude the possibility of rape having taken place. Jack ultimately decided to accept a plea bargain after consulting with his lawyer. Brittany's family also agreed to the deal to avoid a lengthy and draining trial. According to Jack, Brittany asked him to drop her off at her boyfriend's house, and he agreed. First, he drove Tommy home, and then he planned to take Brittany to her boyfriend's house. But before doing so, he pulled over to the side of the road and started smoking crack. This enraged Brittany, who began yelling at him and slapped him on the arm. This angered Jack, and he started punching Brittany. He admitted to punching her in the face and head at least twice because she tried to intervene and stop him from smoking. After Brittany was beaten, she started making gasping and gurgling sounds. Meanwhile, Jack was getting high as blood flowed from her nose and mouth. When he finally paid attention to her, Brittany had stopped breathing. He realized she was dead and decided to get rid of the body. However, the authorities didn't believe his story because the medical examiner found signs of strangulation on Brittany's body that Jack had left out. Additionally, he couldn't explain why Brittany was found without any clothes. The prosecution thought the crime was motivated by sexual intentions, and an Ocean County grand jury accused Jack of murder on February 9, 2005. Jack later admitted to purposely and knowingly causing serious bodily injury that resulted in death on October 18, 2005. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison without parole on January 13, 2006. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Emmett Corrigan. Ashley Harmon, a bright and energetic person, became a caretaker for her 5 siblings after her parents' divorce at age 9. Her strong faith as a devout Mormon gave her strength and comfort in tough times, helping her overcome obstacles with determination and courage. In 2003, Ashley, a human development major, met Emmett Corrigan, a philosophy student, while attending Utah State. Like Ashley, Emmett's parents divorced when he was 10, and he had a tough time coping with the aftermath. However, he eventually found comfort in the Mormon faith. Although Emmett wasn't born into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, he converted to the church at 17 in a ceremony attended by his family and friends. Ashley initially thought Emmett was cute, and he felt the same way about her. Emmett was impressed by Ashley's intelligence and was immediately smitten with her from the moment they met. In fact, he confided in his closest friends that he knew Ashley was the one he wanted to marry. Emmett proposed to Ashley at Christmas 2008, and she happily accepted. They married in a Mormon temple, surrounded by shared beliefs. Overjoyed, they started their new life, finding stability and happiness in their union. In Mormonism, marriage is sacred and eternal, lasting beyond death, with divorce only allowed in extreme cases. Ashley and Emmett welcomed twin daughters in 2005, feeling overjoyed and thrilled to experience parenthood. While attending Utah State University, they balanced childcare and education, relying on faith and love to overcome challenges. Emmett graduated from Utah State University with honors in 2009, attended law school and passed the bar, becoming a bankruptcy attorney. Meanwhile, Ashley stayed home to care for their 4 kids, managing the household while Emmett built his career. Behind closed doors, their seemingly perfect life hid secrets. In August 2010, Emmett faced increasing pressure to provide for his family of 4 young children, all under the age of 5, as the financial burden became overwhelming. To improve his financial situation, Emmett decided to establish his own criminal defense law firm. A friend introduced him to Candy Hall, a reputable paralegal with prior experience working for a criminal attorney. Following a successful lunch meeting, Emmett hired Candy as an assistant for his criminal defense firm. Candy Hall's husband was not in the story. It was Robert Hall, the Emmett, who was a great dad and worker. When his wife, Ashley, got a job, he was thrilled. But as his business and family responsibilities grew, Ashley noticed a strain on their marriage. Robert coped with the pressure by working out excessively, often at inconvenient times, leaving Ashley to care for their 4 kids alone. On January 15, 2011, Ashley and Emmett had their 5th child, a son, despite their growing distance. However, Emmett's behavior towards their newborn was different from how he had behaved with their other children. Instead of being attentive, he started spending more and more time away, sometimes staying out overnight. Ashley confided in her sister that she was worried about Emmett's actions and suspected he might be cheating on her. Around the same time, Emmett's assistant, Candy Hall, was experiencing her own marital problems. She told a friend that her husband, Rob, was jealous of her working for the charismatic Emmett, and their constant fights were affecting their marriage. On their 7th wedding anniversary, March 6, 2011, Ashley was left alone with the children while Emmett claimed he was attending a bodybuilding convention. Ashley felt panicked and concerned about her marriage, wondering if she was doing something wrong that made Emmett unhappy. Although she was unhappy, Ashley was determined to work through their problems and make their marriage better, as divorce was not an option for her. Ashley decided to tackle the issue head-on. She planned a perfect evening to mend her relationship with Emmett, cooking his favorite meal and ensuring the kids were on their best behavior. But when he arrived 2 hours late, he turned away from her kiss. Undeterred, Ashley remained steadfast in her goal to rekindle their love, believing it was worth trying to. 2 hours after Ashley finished preparing dinner, the Corrigan family gathered around the table to eat. However, Emmett claimed he wasn't hungry, despite Ashley's obvious effort and attention to detail. It was clear she had invested a lot of time, thought, and love into the meal, but Emmett's lack of interest left Ashley feeling disappointed and hurt. As the rest of the family enjoyed their meal, Emmett suddenly got up, saying he needed to go to Walgreens. He promised to be right back, seeming not to notice Ashley's growing concern. Ashley suspected there was more to Emmett's actions and begged him to stay and connect with her, reminding him of their family's importance. However, Emmett responded harshly, telling Ashley not to dictate what he did. He then left the house, leaving Ashley feeling confused and hurt. On the same day, another issue was emerging in Emmett's life. His assistant Candy and her husband Rob Hall were at a crisis point in their marriage. Despite their love for each other, Rob was packing his belongings, deciding to leave their home, believing it was best to distance himself and start fresh. That evening, Rob phoned his daughter to ask if she was out driving Candy's car. She told him she wasn't. A few minutes later, his daughter drove past Walgreens and spotted Candy's car in the parking lot, but thought little of it. She immediately called her father to report her discovery. Rob's initial reaction was a casual, "Oh, okay." Little did they realize that this ordinary phone call was about to drastically change the course of 2 families' lives forever. Meanwhile, Ashley lay in bed, her heart heavy with worry, praying fervently for her marriage to succeed. She had been texting and calling Emmett desperately, trying to reach him, but he wasn't responding. Her intuition told her something was wrong, and she couldn't shake off a sense of unease. Around 1 p.m., a 911 call reported gunshots and a screaming woman in the Walgreens parking lot, prompting a rapid police response. As they arrived at the scene, officers were uncertain about what they would find. Had there been a random drive-by shooting, a botched drug deal, a robbery, or something entirely different? Without knowing what to expect, they approached the area with caution. When the first officer stepped out of the patrol car, he was met with a horrific scene. A lifeless body lay on the ground, and a second person, wounded and in agony, was clutching their head. The injured person was rushed to the hospital with a gunshot wound, leaving the police with more questions than answers. Amidst the chaos, one key witness caught the police's attention. Her name was Candy Hall, and she was present at the crime scene. At the hospital, Candy identified the injured man as her husband, Rob, and the deceased man as her boss, Emmett. The autopsy revealed that Emmett had been shot twice, once in the head and once in the chest. Shortly after Emmett's lifeless body was discovered in the Walgreens parking lot, his wife Ashley received a knock on her front door. When she answered, she was greeted by police officers who broke the devastating news. Her husband, Emmett, had been shot and killed. Ashley was left stunned, inconsolable, and bewildered, struggling to comprehend what could have led to this tragic event. After the police informed Ashley that her husband had been killed, a detective asked her about Rob and Candy Hall. Ashley knew Candy as Emmett's assistant, but she suspected that Candy and Emmett were having an affair. The police took Candy in for questioning from the Walgreens parking lot, trying to piece together what led to Emmett's murder and Rob being shot in the head. When detectives asked Candy if she had a romantic relationship with her boss Emmett, she denied it. They also asked if they had ever had sex, and Candy strongly denied that too. Candy told the detectives that she had gone to Walgreens that night to pick up a prescription. She claimed to have run into Emmett by chance in the store, and they decided to go for a drive in his car. As they drove to a gas station, Candy's phone rang. It was her estranged husband, Rob. Candy told Rob that she was out with Emmett, but the conversation turned sour when Rob became jealous and threatened to hurt Emmett. At long last, Candy and Emmett pulled up to Walgreens. As they got out of the car, Candy's heart sank when she saw Rob standing at the entrance, his face red with anger. The air was electric with tension as a fierce argument broke out between Rob and Emmett, which quickly escalated into a physical fight. Just as suddenly, 3 loud gunshots rang out. Candy spun around to see both men lying on the ground. She quickly spotted the gun lying nearby, picked it up, and flung it away from herself. Candy couldn't identify who fired the first shot. Rob was shot in the head, stitched up, and questioned by detectives. They found his gun at the scene and asked who it belonged to. Rob said it was his, explaining Emmett and he fought in a parking lot. The gun fell, they struggled, Emmett shot Rob, and Rob couldn't recall who fired the fatal shot due to his wound. Detectives wondered if Emmett might have fired first, since he ended up dead. Since the shooting took place in the Walgreens parking lot, the detectives turned to the security footage for answers. Upon reviewing the footage, they noticed Rob Hall arriving in the parking lot at 9:55 p.m. 1 minute later, Rob was seen entering the Walgreens store, seemingly searching for someone as he rushed through each aisle. The security footage captured Rob exiting the Walgreens at 10:06 p.m. and parking his car beside Candy's vehicle. He then waited there for the next few minutes. Approximately 10 minutes later, Emmett's truck appeared on the footage as it pulled into the parking lot. However, the shooting itself was not caught on camera. Candy initially denied being romantically involved with her boss, but rumors among their co-workers suggested otherwise. According to their co-workers, Candy and Rob were seen frequently spending time together in his office with the door closed, just 3 weeks after she was hired. On the day Emmett was shot, detectives made a curious discovery. Emmett had accompanied Candy to the public defender's office to discuss divorcing Rob. During the investigation into Emmett Corrigan's murder, crime scene investigators searched his vehicle in the parking lot and found steroids in the glove compartment. This discovery wasn't a surprise to many of Emmett's loved ones, as he had been heavily focused on bodybuilding and his behavior had changed, leading some to suspect he was using steroids. When Candy gave her statement to the detectives, she described a specific pattern of shots that suggested Rob shot and killed Emmett twice before turning the gun on himself and shooting himself in the head. This evidence was enough for the detectives to obtain an arrest warrant for Rob Hall, charging him with first-degree murder. As a result, Rob Hall was arrested and charged with Emmett Corrigan's murder. Rob Hall faced severe consequences for his actions. A conviction for first-degree murder would have resulted in either life imprisonment without parole or the death penalty. When Rob Hall went on trial for the murder of Emmett Ashley, Emmett's widow hoped the trial would bring her some closure and help her grieve. She believed that understanding her husband's affair and death would provide her with a sense of closure. According to the prosecution, Rob was enraged by Emmett's affair with his wife Candy and blamed him for ruining his marriage. They claimed that Rob shot Emmett and then attempted to take his own life. However, Rob's defense team presented a different account. They argued that Emmett was the aggressor on the night of his death and had a history of abusing steroids. The defense alleged that during the altercation, Emmett grabbed Rob's gun, shot Rob, and then Rob regained control of the weapon and killed Emmett in self-defense. Candy Hall, the wife of Rob Hall, was a key witness in his trial. Her testimony during the trial differed slightly from the account she provided to the police on the night of Emmett's death. On the witness stand, Candy claimed to have heard a distinct sequence of shots, stating that there was an initial pop, followed by 2 more quick pops. This revised account supported the defense's argument, which suggested that Emmett had shot Rob Hall first, before Rob managed to regain control of the gun and shoot Emmett twice, resulting in his death. Prosecutors needed to prove Rob, not Emmett, was the Walgreens shooter. They presented forensic evidence that the murder weapon leaves significant gunshot residue, GSR, after firing. Tests showed Rob had 32 GSR particles on his left palm and 23 on his right, while Emmett had 1 on his left hand and none on his right, proving Rob fired the gun. After careful consideration, the jury found Rob Hall not guilty of first-degree murder. However, they did reach a unanimous decision that he was guilty of second-degree murder, meaning the murder was not premeditated. The judge presiding over the case sentenced Rob to 30 years in prison, and he will be eligible for parole in 2028 when he is 58 years old. Despite being convicted, Rob has consistently claimed innocence and appealed his conviction in 2021. However, the Idaho Supreme Court upheld his conviction, denying him a retrial. 2 months after Emmett's murder, Candy Hall was arrested and charged with embezzlement for allegedly stealing from her previous employer, an attorney. These embezzlement charges were unrelated to Emmett's murder. Instead of facing the original embezzlement allegations, Candy pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of grand theft and received a prison sentence. She was released on parole in 2014, but remains on probation until 2026. Candy Hall spoke candidly on Dateline, overcome with guilt about the incident's harm to her relationships with her kids. She's unsure how to move forward, hoping to prove to them it was a regrettable mistake. Ashley's life was shattered when her husband Emmett was murdered by his lover's husband. She bravely confronted Emmett's lover on Dr. Phil in 2015. Refusing to be defined by grief, Ashley rebuilt her life by leaving the past behind and starting anew. She moved to a new town, and her 5 kids slowly rediscovered happiness. Ashley found love again, remarried, and had 2 more kids. Now she uses her blog to support others who've endured trauma. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Anna Repkina. On April 17, 2017, a caretaker named Russell found a dead body in the Oregon forest. The woman was Anna Repkina, a Russian native who had been shot in the head and had various trash around her body. Russell reported the discovery to the police. Anna Alexieva Repkina, from Chelyabinsk, Russia, came from a respectable family. She was intelligent, hardworking, and had a passion for travel, rock music, cats, and capturing memories through photography. Anna valued love and longed to be loved in return. She aspired to get married, have children, and build a family home. Those who knew her still cherished the memory of her infectious sense of humor, which made her a joy to be around. In 2016, Anna's 7-year relationship with her high school sweetheart came to an end, leaving her heartbroken. However, she refused to give up on her dreams of finding true love. With online dating becoming increasingly popular, Anna decided to take a chance and signed up for several websites. It was on a Russian dating site that she matched with someone who seemed to fit her ideal perfectly. His name was William Hargrove, a 26-year-old from Oregon who worked as a bouncer and mechanic. Interestingly, William had a strong affinity for Russian culture, and he claimed to have fallen for Anna as well. William treated Anna with kindness, frequently praising her. Despite being physically distant, he made an effort to be emotionally present when she needed him. His friends described him as a charismatic, passionate, and likable individual with a great sense of humor. He was a driven person who inspired those around him to pursue their goals. According to his former roommate, William had a remarkable ability to talk his way in or out of any situation. Anna and William communicated daily, and their online relationship rapidly became serious over a few months. They seemed destined to be together, sharing a deep connection. Their common interests, such as enjoying live music and having a similar sense of humor, made them a perfect match, as observed by their friends. Anna and William were very compatible. William was extremely sweet. Despite being separated by continents, he would frequently send her flowers. Soon, they started discussing meeting in person. In December 2016, they decided to take their months-old relationship to the next level. Anna booked a flight to Oregon to see William. However, Anna made a mistake on her first attempt. She accidentally booked a ticket for Portland, Maine, instead of Portland, Oregon. By the time she realized her error, she had already flown to Maine. Still, she was determined to spend the Christmas holidays with her boyfriend. She corrected her flight issues and arrived in Oregon on time. William picked her up from the airport. Anna and William shared 10 wonderful days together. He took her on guided tours, and they explored the seaside, played in the snow, and snuggled up by the fireplace. He introduced her to his friends, making their time together even more special. As the clock struck midnight on New Year's Eve, they joyfully shouted, "Happy New Year," and shared a romantic kiss. For both of them, it was the perfect Christmas, and they both felt they were meant to be together. After Anna's 10-day visit came to an end, William proposed to her with his grandmother's emerald ring, and she happily accepted. From that moment on, the two were engaged. However, what Anna was unaware of was that William had been unfaithful to her. He had been secretly involved with Michelle Chavez, his 33-year-old landlady, who was already married with 2 children. William had been renting a room in Michelle's home, and their affair had been ongoing for over a year, even before Anna's visit. In reality, Anna had unknowingly met Michelle, who was posing as William's landlady, and was in fact William's romantic rival. Michelle was aware that her boyfriend William had brought his girlfriend Anna to her home. She didn't confront them, possibly thinking that William would never leave her or that Anna was insignificant. Just like her own husband. Whatever her reason, she kept quiet. However, things became clearer when Michelle discovered the engagement ring. Anna, thrilled with the news, posted a picture of her ring on Facebook. The post appeared on Michelle's homepage, thanks to the algorithm. Michelle was furious, not just because William was engaged to another woman, but because she had planned to leave her husband for him. In a bold move, Michelle took off her wedding ring and handed it to William. The ring was identical to Anna's engagement ring. It was the same one William had recycled. Michelle expressed her anger to William, who repeatedly assured her that Anna meant nothing to him and that he would break off the engagement on March 1st, 2017. Meanwhile, Anna returned to Oregon, preparation in full swing. She had packed her wedding dress in a suitcase and had even resigned from her job, ready to start a new life with her fiancé, William. Michelle grew concerned about the seriousness of Anna and William's relationship, so she decided to intervene. One day, she reached out to Anna on Facebook and revealed everything that had been going on. Anna then reported back to William about the conversation with Michelle. However, William dismissed Michelle's concerns, attributing them to jealousy as his ex. Despite this, the couple was determined to move forward with their plans, ignoring Michelle's warnings. They proceeded to schedule their wedding for March 23rd, planning to exchange vows by the seaside. Anna wore the wedding dress she had brought from Russia, and they headed to the beach for the ceremony. However, the officiant failed to show up. After waiting for what felt like an eternity, they returned home, deciding to try again in April. William consistently made it clear to Anna that she was insignificant to him and that he didn't love her. However, Anna refused to accept this. Michelle grew tired of the situation and decided to intervene. On April 15th, Michelle gave William an ultimatum. He had to choose between her and Anna. He couldn't continue to lead both women on. Michelle also issued a stark warning. If Anna wasn't gone by April 20th, she would take drastic action. Building a snowman was a sinister euphemism for killing someone and hiding their body in a location where it would remain frozen and undiscovered. After Michelle clearly expressed her feelings to William, she was unable to reach him. She assumed he had chosen Anna over her. The next day, Sunday the 16th of April, Michelle left voicemails for William in an attempt to convey her emotions. However, William called Michelle to inform her that he was single again, having ended his relationship with Anna. The breakup was messy, but Anna was in the process of returning to Russia. As it happened, William's car had collided with a deer, leaving him stranded at the Ali Murtal store. He asked Michelle to meet him there, which she agreed to, despite being in the middle of a family gathering on Easter Sunday. Michelle left her family's house and drove to the store, where she and William reconnected. They celebrated their rekindled relationship by having sex in William's car on the 17th of April. Anna's body was discovered in the forest at the start of the investigation into her death. The investigators had no idea who she was, as there was no identification on her, and she had only been in the state for about a month. There was no sign of a murder weapon, only litter scattered around her. However, among the trash, a clear plastic bag caught their attention, containing a KFC receipt, an empty Pepsi cup, and a KFC chicken bag. The KFC receipt was the crucial piece of evidence, bearing a date, time, and debit card number. The debit card was traced back to Kevin Thomas, who was subsequently tracked down by the investigators. Kevin revealed that he and William had a weekly habit of getting lunch at KFC every Friday, and the receipt was from a purchase about a week before his questioning. Kevin had been the one to expose William's complicated romantic relationships. The investigation into Anna's death was the only reason William's infidelity had ever come to light. Kevin also recalled that William had borrowed his shotgun, claiming he wanted to go to the woods to blow off some steam. After obtaining Kevin's statement, the police shifted their focus to William and Michelle. William's behavior became increasingly suspicious, as he was caught on camera in stores where he had purchased cigars and Star Wars Legos. He even confided in Kevin that he was splurging on things he couldn't afford in an attempt to lift his spirits. On the 16th, William broke down in tears in the arms of a store employee, claiming his girlfriend had just dumped him. However, William had actually moved back in with Michelle, and when questioned by the police about his whereabouts on the 16th of April, he falsely stated that he had gone for a drive with Michelle. When asked about his relationship with Anna, William denied any romance, saying he had met her in Corvallis while out walking, went on 2 dates, but realized it wouldn't work out between them, which ended things between them. William said the last time he saw Anna was in mid-March. He also mentioned that Anna had mistakenly posted about their engagement on Facebook, which caused trouble for him with his actual partner, Michelle. William was questioned about trash near his late fiancée, Anna Rapina's body. He confessed to littering, but claimed he'd thrown KFC trash away 40 miles from the scene. Investigators were skeptical. When told his trash was found near another murder victim, William was shocked, then asked for a lawyer. He was arrested April 19th for Anna's murder. Michelle was questioned after William's arrest. Initially, she stuck to their rehearsed story, saying they spent the day together. However, under continued questioning, she admitted lying and gave a new account, claiming William was supposed to call and pick her up, but never did. Later, when Michelle was being questioned by the police, they told her that her boyfriend of a year and a half was being held in custody on suspicion of murder. Her response was a simple, "Okay." The investigator found this reaction suspicious and highlighted it, which caused Michelle's emotions to become visible. She started to whimper and attributed her initial lack of reaction to being in a state of shock. William Hargrove was facing trial in October 2019 for murder, identity theft, and 2 counts of theft, charges that were filed in June 2018. The prosecution sought to have William convicted on all counts, while the defense argued that he was innocent and that Melissa, his burnt lover, was the actual perpetrator. However, the prosecution presented strong evidence against William, highlighting his motive and guilt. It was revealed that William had a second lover, Michelle, who was pressuring him to choose between her and Anna. Furthermore, evidence showed that William had driven with Anna, and his cell phone records placed him near the scene of the crime on the day of her murder, at 4:30 p.m. on Logging Road. The shotgun used to kill Anna was found in William's car, with only his fingerprints on the weapon. Moreover, despite claiming to have no involvement in Anna's death, William was caught using her money to pay off his car insurance, make ATM withdrawals, and go shopping. The prosecution alleged that William had taken Anna to the forest, shot and killed her, and then used her money to pay off his debts, all because he was choosing between Anna and Michelle. The defense argued that their client was innocent and pointed to Melissa as the prime suspect. According to them, Melissa had motives to harm Anna, having previously threatened to build a snowman with her. Furthermore, Melissa's cell phone had been found on the logging road just weeks before Anna's murder, suggesting she had likely been in the area to plan the crime. When searched, Melissa's house yielded Anna's cell phone, which implicated her further. Despite this, Melissa was not charged with any crimes and was called as a witness for the prosecution. Melissa took the stand to testify about her relationships, including how she met William and the dynamics between them. As a late-night cab driver, she had met William at the bar where he worked. With her husband's knowledge and consent, she started an affair with William, which grew intense over time. Eventually, William even rented a room in her house to be closer to her. Both her marriage and her relationship with William were open, meaning they allowed each other to have outside relationships. When Anna first appeared, Melissa wasn't interested. However, by Anna's second visit, which seemed like it would be a long-term stay, Melissa was upset, particularly after seeing her own wedding ring on Anna's finger. Although Melissa had given William an ultimatum, she was not involved in his harming Anna. She claimed she never intended for Anna to get hurt or worse, lose her life. Melissa continued to defend herself against the defense's allegations. The threat about building a snowman was a joke, albeit an extreme one, which was a family joke. Her cell phone was indeed found in the forest, but William had driven her there. She had no idea why he did so or what he was planning. Furthermore, William had given her Anna's cell phone the day before he was questioned by the authorities. Melissa's testimony lasted for 14 hours. Besides Melissa, around 70 other people gave testimony, including Anna's mother, William's best friend and roommate, as well as some of Melissa's family members. In her hometown in Oregon, Melissa faced intense scrutiny, with locals criticizing and bullying her. At one point, she even attempted to take her own life, but fortunately, it was unsuccessful. Prosecutor praised Melissa's efforts, calling them tough, super tough. After a month of court appearances, the judge asked the jury to deliver a verdict. They deliberated for under 3 hours, finding no evidence linking Michelle to Anna's death, unlike William, and clearing her alibi. William maintained his not guilty plea, but the overwhelming evidence proved conclusive, and he was found guilty on all counts, receiving a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 25 years. His attorney, however, announced plans to file an appeal. The jurors in Anna's case developed a strong bond during the trial. After the verdict, They were escorted to the logging trail, the site where Anna's body was found, to pay their respects. Anna will be remembered as a brave young woman who left her Russian homeland to build a new life in the United States. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Mary Catherine Higdon. Mary Catherine Higdon, born in 1994, was a lively child who spread joy wherever she went. Her infectious laughter and humor brought delight to those around her, often with her quick wit and impressive impersonations. She loved taking leisurely strolls around town with her pet frog perched on a shoestring, proudly showing it off to everyone. From a young age, Mary had a deep appreciation for nature and animals, spending hours exploring the outdoors and marveling at the beauty of the natural world. Aside from being an entertainment enthusiast, Mary had a passion for performing. She would often stage plays for her family, captivating them with her creativity and boundless imagination. As she grew older, Mary was introduced to firearms and developed a strong interest in them. She learned the importance of handling guns responsibly, respecting their power and potential. Over time, her skills improved and she became an accomplished marksman with a growing passion for guns. Mary Catherine met her soulmate, Stephen Freeman, in high school. Born on January 1st, 1995, in Griffin, Georgia, Stephen grew up in a close-knit family with his parents and brother. He was a happy child with many friends who described him as laid-back, kind, and helpful. Stephen's family was very important to him, especially his mother, with whom he shared a special bond. He loved spending time outdoors, enjoying activities like hiking, camping, fishing, and hunting. Mary Catherine and Stephen quickly formed a strong connection in high school, united by their shared passion for the outdoors. Their love for nature brought them together, and their relationship flourished as they explored the great outdoors, whether hiking, camping, fishing, or hunting. This connection served as the foundation of their deep and enduring relationship. Mary Catherine and Stephen's high school graduation marked the start of a new era in their lives as a couple. They decided to take their relationship to the next level by moving in together in a house in Griffin, Georgia. The couple was ecstatic about having their own space and starting a new life. Mary Catherine had become an integral part of Stephen's family, with his mother treating her like a daughter. She welcomed Mary Catherine into their family with open arms, and the couple felt grateful for her love and support. Every Sunday, Mary Catherine and Stephen would visit Stephen's parents for a big family dinner. This weekly tradition brought the family closer together and solidified Mary Catherine's place within it. Over time, Stephen's friends also grew to appreciate Mary Catherine. Initially, they had reservations about the couple's relationship, but as they spent more time together, they realized how well-suited the pair were. They admired how Mary Catherine brought happiness and joy into Stephen's life and shared his passion for the outdoors. Stephen, a metal worker, repaired roofs. His wife, Mary Catherine, had two jobs: part-time teacher's assistant and sales at a sporting goods store, where she learned gun safety from coworker Thomas Skinner. This complemented Stephen's passion for firearms as an avid hunter and target shooter with multiple guns, including a Glock 42 at home for protection. By summer 2018, Mary Catherine and Stephen had been in a 5-year relationship in Griffin, Georgia. Tragically, it came to an end on August 1st. That day, Mary Catherine made a frantic 911 call, screaming that she had accidentally shot Stephen. When police arrived at their apartment, they found Mary Catherine in a state of distress, crying and hyperventilating over Stephen's motionless body. Despite his still being alive with a chest wound, Mary Catherine was screaming that she couldn't lose him. An ambulance rushed Stephen to the hospital, where doctors made efforts to save his life, but unfortunately, he eventually succumbed to his injuries. Mary Catherine visited the police station to explain the shooting incident. She claimed that she had accidentally shot Stephen while handing him a gun, which he normally kept beside his bed for protection. However, the police officers detected the smell of alcohol on her breath and noticed discrepancies in her account, which shifted from handing the gun to tossing it. The police were skeptical, knowing that a tossed gun would not fire on its own, and the nature of the wound suggested that Mary Catherine had deliberately pointed the gun at Stephen. During the interview, Mary Catherine eventually confessed that she had acted out of anger. Although the police had recorded the interview, there was only feedback during the crucial moment when she admitted to shooting Stephen out of anger. Nevertheless, despite the missing recording, the police were convinced that they had collected sufficient forensic evidence to prove that Mary Catherine had intentionally shot her boyfriend Stephen. At the apartment of Mary Catherine and Stephen, police found evidence of a heated argument before Stephen was shot. Scattered food suggested a prior altercation. This was the 6th time police had been called to the residence in the past year due to domestic disturbances. Despite Mary Catherine's claims, the gun used in the shooting was found to have been loaded that night. Traces of grease on the gun and magazine led the police to conclude that Mary Catherine, who was cooking dinner at the time, had loaded the weapon after shooting Stephen. Stephen's friends told police their relationship was marked by frequent arguments, possessiveness, and verbal abuse from Mary Catherine. Friends saw her as mentally unstable, causing tension. When Stephen tried to distance himself, she'd bombard him with texts and calls, forcing him to block her. One friend revealed Mary Catherine pulled a gun on Stephen multiple times, but he didn't report it, fearing trouble for her. Stephen's friends were stunned when they learned that Mary Catherine had accidentally shot him, especially since they knew she was familiar with firearms. However, what they were unaware of was that 3 months earlier, Stephen had confided in a friend that Mary Catherine had a disturbing episode where she ran around outside, screaming at the top of her lungs, and even attempted to shoot both him and herself. Furthermore, just a month before the incident, Stephen had shared with another friend that although Mary Catherine had previously threatened him with a gun, this time her eyes had a look that genuinely terrified him, making him believe she might actually carry out her threat. Stephen's friends told police he'd been tired of Mary Catherine's behavior and planned to leave her after 7 years. He intended to move away without telling her, fearing her reaction. On July 30th, 2018, Stephen sent Mary Catherine a friendly text, but the next night, he ignored her calls and texts after a fight. Mary Catherine was cooking dinner when she noticed Stephen was missing. She called his mom, who said he was with a friend. Enraged, Mary Catherine drove to the friend's house to confront him. When she arrived, she saw Stephen in the truck and began yelling at him. He tried to calm her down, saying he was heading home. Stephen's friend said Mary Catherine pulled a gun on him multiple times, but she denied it. She admitted threatening suicide with a gun, though. His mom believed Mary Catherine's threats kept Stephen from leaving, fearing she'd harm herself if he did. Mary Catherine said Stephen escalated the situation, becoming violent, throwing dinner in her face. She claimed self-defense, grabbing a gun to scare him off, but he lunged at her, and as she backed away, she saw he was bleeding from the chest. At the time of the shooting, Mary Catherine didn't share her account of events with the police because she was too embarrassed to reveal that Stephen had a history of violence towards her, including hitting her in the past and being controlling. In fact, she claimed that on one occasion, he kicked her out of bed so forcefully that her head hit the door frame. However, Stephen's friends described their relationship differently, saying they had seen Mary Catherine hit Stephen, including an incident where she slapped him hard in the face. By contrast, Mary Catherine's sister offered a different view, stating that 2 weeks before the shooting, she had seen bruises on Mary Catherine's arm. Mary Catherine's sister said Mary Catherine confided in her about Stephen's physical attack. The police investigation found Stephen's death was a murder. Mary Catherine was arrested and charged with murder and other crimes. She refused a plea deal and chose to go to trial, claiming she shot Stephen in self-defense to protect herself from his aggression. A year after Stephen's death, Mary Catherine's trial began, revealing the tumultuous nature of their relationship. Her defense team argued that she acted in self-defense, citing Stephen's history of aggressive and abusive behavior as justification for her actions. To support their claim, they presented evidence to the jury that demonstrated Stephen's controlling, manipulative, and dangerous nature, which had led Mary Catherine to fear for her safety. Mary Catherine testified tearfully about years of abuse by Stephen, recounting a disturbing pattern of physical, mental, emotional, verbal, and sexual mistreatment. She described his attacks, belittling, and disregard for her humanity, saying his abuse knew no bounds, leaving her trapped and terrified. Mary Catherine's defense presented a text from Stephen, saying he'd punish her when he got home. Mary Catherine testified that meant physical abuse, and if she defended herself, he'd hit her harder. Another text shown in court read, "Don't hit me, or I'll hit you back 2 times harder." Mary Catherine testified that Stephen had a red room, like in 50 Shades of Grey, where they had aggressive and violent sex. She provided a text from Stephen saying, "You're going to the red room," to back her claim. Mary Catherine also alleged Stephen assaulted her twice, once after a Disney World trip, saying she felt uncomfortable with their increasingly aggressive sex and asked him to stop. But he intensified his efforts, claiming she owed him for gifts. The defense presented text messages from Stephen to support Mary Catherine's abuse claims. These messages were vulgar, threatening, and showed a pattern of verbal assaults. Over 60 pages of messages showcased Stephen's abuse, including one disturbing message where he held a dead fish, captioned, "This is you." Another message presented to the court was one from Stephen after Mary Catherine cheated on him, in which he wrote that he was going to wreck her for wrecking him. Furthermore, the defense alleged that Stephen had a drug and alcohol addiction that contributed to his violent outbursts. Mary Catherine said she broke up with Stephen, not the other way around. She claimed he got angry and threatened her, so she grabbed a gun in self-defense. Her last words to him before firing were, "Get out of my house." Stephen's friends and family disputed Mary Catherine's claims that he was violent and abusive, knowing him as friendly and caring. His mom denied knowledge of disturbing texts and threats, but claimed he only said hurtful things out of anger. Mary Catherine was questioned about not reporting Stephen's alleged abuse. The state also pointed out she searched for violent, explicit images online hours before the shooting, claiming she did it to please Stephen. The state argued she'd changed her story about the shooting at least 10 times since her initial interview. Evidence in court included a text from Stephen to Mary Catherine, saying she'd previously pointed a gun at him, and his friends testified about witnessing her abuse towards him, supporting the state's claim that she was violent towards him, not the other way around. Jurors deliberated for 4 hours before acquitting Mary Catherine of malice murder, felony murder, and lesser charges. Shocked family and friends expected a guilty verdict, but jurors later revealed they believed Mary Catherine intentionally killed Stephen. However, they couldn't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt due to lack of evidence, making it hard to distinguish murder from self-defense. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Michael Haight. Michael Haight was born on January 7, 1980 in Seattle, Washington, but his family moved to Cedar City, Utah, when he was young, after his father finished dental school. Growing up, Michael was an active boy who enjoyed playing baseball, basketball, and soccer. He achieved the rank of Eagle Scout and performed well academically. After graduating from high school in 1998, Michael worked at a fish plant in Alaska during the summer, where he quickly rose to the position of line manager, overseeing more than a dozen men due to his strong work ethic and dedication. Michael then served a mission trip to South Brazil as a devoted member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which further deepened his faith and strengthened his bond with his religious community. Upon returning to the United States, Michael pursued a business degree at Southern Utah University, graduating in 2004. During his time at the university, he met his future wife, Tasha Earle, and they fell in love, getting married in the St. George Temple on May 10, 2003. Michael seemed like the perfect family man to those who didn't know him. He was always involved in his kids' lives, coaching their sports teams, attending school concerts, and spending quality time with them, whether it was sledding or working on projects in the garage. But on January 4th, 2023, the illusion he created around his family life shattered. That day, police found 8 dead bodies at the Haight residence, leaving investigators and neighbors stunned and confused. When Tasha Haight missed an online appointment and her husband Michael failed to show up for work, their colleagues became worried and alerted the police to check on the family's welfare at their home in Enoch. The officers arrived at the Haight residence, but no one answered the door. As they walked around the property, it looked like nobody was home. Knowing the family had 5 kids, the police contacted the Iron County School District to see if any of the children were in school that day, but it turned out none of the kids were present when the police arrived at the Haight home. The officers searched the premises to make sure there was no immediate danger, and after a thorough search, confirmed that nobody needed medical attention, and there were no signs of an active threat. The detectives arrived at the crime scene shortly after it was declared. Upon entering the main bedroom, they saw 4-year-old Gavin lying on his stomach with his head turned to the left, one arm under his head on a pillow, and a blanket covering part of his body. His sister Tasha was similarly positioned with only part of her body covered by the blanket. On the other side of the bed, they found Gail Earle, Tasha's mother, lying on her back with her head on a pillow and partially covered by a blanket, just like her daughter and grandson. In Bry's room, the detectives found the 12-year-old girl lying in bed, slightly inclined and partially covered with a blanket. In Amon's room, they discovered the 7-year-old boy lying face down in the corner of the room, without a pillow or blanket. His twin sister Sienna was found in her bedroom, lying on her left side in bed with her head resting on a pillow and covered with a blanket. The eldest child, 17-year-old Macy, was found in her bed, her head resting on a pillow and her body covered by the blanket. The detectives discovered Michael Haight's body in the exercise room in the basement of his home, lying on top of a sleeping bag. All 8 victims, including his wife, mother-in-law, and 5 children, were found dead with gunshot wounds. Given the circumstances, it didn't take long for the detectives to identify Michael Haight as the primary suspect. They believed he had killed his family members before taking his own life. A neighbor's testimony played a crucial role in helping the detectives reconstruct the timeline of the crime. The neighbor recalled waking up at 3:30 a.m. to use the bathroom and hearing a loud bang, similar to fireworks, as she exited her room. However, she felt annoyed because it was past the permitted date for fireworks in the neighborhood. She then heard 2 more bangs in quick succession, followed by a short pause. This pattern continued, with brief pauses before each subsequent bang, except for a longer pause before the final one. Based on the neighbor's statement and the condition of the 8 bodies found inside the house, detectives theorized that the loud noises she had heard around 3:30 a.m. were directly connected to the events of that night. They suspected that Michael Hatch committed the brutal murders during this specific time frame. During the investigation into the Hatch family murders, detectives discovered that an unnamed person outside the family had reported abuse to the Utah Division of Child and Family Services in 2020. This individual claimed that 14-year-old Macy confided in them about her fear of her father, sparking a deeper investigation into the Hatch household. After receiving the DCFS report, Macy and her parents were questioned separately. During Macy's interview, the investigator uncovered disturbing information. Macy revealed that her father had choked her on multiple occasions, and she feared he would kill her. She disclosed that the violent attacks began in 2017, including an incident where her father grabbed her by the shoulders and pushed her into a wooden piece of furniture. When detectives questioned Michael Hatch, he claimed he had never physically harmed his daughter. He downplayed the incidents Macy described, saying they were simply misunderstandings. Michael attributed his emotional turmoil to two recent events: the death of his father and his brother's divorce. He stated that, in his distress, he took out his frustration on his older daughter, Tasha. Tasha chose not to pursue criminal charges against Michael. Similarly, the Utah Department of Children and Family Services, the Enoch Police Department, and the Iron County Prosecutor's Office decided not to press charges, deeming the case insufficient to meet the prosecution requirements set by the statute. A lethality assessment was conducted with Tasha, which revealed that her relationship with Michael did not pose a significant threat to her life. Nevertheless, victim services were made available to Tasha and her children for several months following the case's opening. Through conversations with Tasha's friends, detectives formed a different impression of Michael Hatch than the one he presented to the community. Tasha's friends revealed that whenever they visited, they would often chat with her, while the kitchen water was running to mask their conversation, as Tasha suspected Michael was spying on her discussions. They also helped Tasha with housework during their visits so Michael wouldn't have anything to criticize her about. Tasha's friends disclosed that whenever she texted them, she would respond with brief, upbeat messages, likely aware that Michael might read them. They believed she did this to maintain a positive facade for Michael's benefit, implying that everything was fine in their marriage. Detectives found Michael displayed controlling behavior towards his wife, Tasha. He took away her car keys and phone to keep her from leaving. They also suspected him after he overreacted to her buying a $30 rug from Walmart, accusing her of excessive spending despite the legitimate need. Tasha shared with her friends her concerns that her 7-year-old son, Amon, was increasingly mimicking his father Michael's bad behavior. Whenever she gave Amon an instruction, he would respond by saying that it was not his job. This worried Tasha because it revealed Amon's growing lack of responsibility and disregard for authority. She mentioned that Michael frequently disregarded or ignored her instructions, and Amon seemed to be following his example. In 2022, Tasha prioritized self-care by getting her nails done despite her busy schedule. However, her husband Michael wasn't supportive, imposing strict rules on her independence. After her appointment, Tasha felt confident and told Michael she'd make it a monthly routine, sparking his anger over the potential cost. To address Michael's concerns, Tasha explained calmly that her monthly self-care expenses came out to $25. Despite this, Michael remained skeptical, claiming that by spending money on her nails, Tasha was essentially taking away from their children's basic needs. This stance stemmed from his need for control and sense of financial responsibility towards their family. At the same time, Tasha began to prioritize her self-care and eventually started losing weight, a significant change after years of her husband calling her fat and ugly. Michael became angry about her weight loss, accusing Tasha of cheating on him as he struggled to explain the sudden change in her appearance. As Michael's controlling behavior escalated, he tried to manipulate Tasha regarding her weight loss. He begged her to stop, fearing that other men might find her attractive. Underlying this request were his deep-seated insecurities and desire for complete control over his wife's body and actions. Michael exhibited a frugal attitude during the holiday season, despite earning a significant income. He allocated only $100 for each of their 5 children to buy gifts, whereas Tasha made sure they had a fulfilling Christmas. However, Michael refused to provide additional funds for his wife and children, justifying his stance by claiming that he didn't see the need to give them more of what he believed was rightfully his. Michael controlled every aspect of Tasha's life, including her cleaning and childcare habits. He insisted on using baby wipes, claiming they were eco-friendly and cost-effective, but this caused Tasha stress and compromised her comfort and hygiene. If she didn't comply, Michael threatened trouble, leaving her fearful and submissive. According to Tasha's friends, she revealed to them that Michael was mean to her throughout their marriage, but he didn't mistreat their children until the late 2010s. However, as time passed, the abuse towards Macy worsened, causing her to contemplate suicide. Michael had unrealistically high expectations for Macy, demanding she maintain straight A's despite her struggles. The pressure to meet his expectations became overwhelming for Macy, who was already dealing with the emotional weight of her father's abuse. Macy's friends shared another disturbing incident with the detective. One evening, Michael came home and found Macy resting her head on her mother's lap. He became enraged and ordered Macy to get up and clean her room. This event left Macy deeply shaken, as she remembered gazing into her father's eyes and seeing hatred and evil staring back. Detectives found another instance where 7-year-old Briley disobeyed Michael's warnings. Michael blamed his wife Tasha for their kids' misbehavior, calling them the worst in the world. He berated Tasha in front of their kids, even calling her fat and ugly. Tasha realized she needed to escape her 20-year marriage to Michael after a distressing incident exposed his abusive nature and temper. Seeing the harm it was causing their kids, she knew she had to leave. Tasha decided to divorce Michael after over 20 years, prioritizing their children's well-being over their marriage. On Dec 21, 2022, she initiated proceedings, but asked to delay serving papers until after the holiday season, wanting one last normal Christmas for their 5 kids before the separation. Michael got divorce papers at his office on Dec 27th. He called Tasha, acting normal, asking about her day, like nothing was wrong. He told her to leave the house, but wanted the kids to stay. Tasha refused, insisting on taking the kids with her. Tasha took the children to her mother's house in Lynn, Utah. That evening, Michael arrived at his mother-in-law's house and tried to persuade Tasha to go for a ride with him. But Tasha declined, telling her friends she had a bad feeling about going anywhere alone with Michael. After Tasha filed for divorce, her mom Gail moved in to help. However, Michael made things worse by moving into the basement fitness room instead of leaving the house. Tasha told her friends she had found a discrepancy in their children's savings accounts, which held $220,000. What she discovered shocked her. Michael had transferred the money out of the accounts without her knowledge or permission. After her father's death, Tasha inherited several firearms, including hunting rifles and a handgun. When she checked her house in January 2023, she realized all the guns were gone. Further investigation revealed Michael had taken the weapons, leaving Tasha and her family defenseless in case of an emergency. Macy, Michael and Tasha's eldest child, confided in her friends that she would welcome her parents' divorce. She longed for the peace that would come with her father's absence from the home. Macy even kept a secret phone in her room, which she used to record her father's erratic behavior, hoping to gather evidence to support the divorce. However, Tasha found the phone and hid it away. Macy's younger sister, Briley, had a troubled home life due to the constant drama. To escape this, Briley would often visit her neighbor's house, where she found comfort with their grandchildren. Briley confided in a friend that she was relieved about her parents' upcoming divorce. She had even bought some new books, but was too afraid to tell her father, fearing he would become angry. Tasha met her lawyer on January 3, 2023, to discuss her divorce from abusive husband Michael. She felt relieved he'd moved to the basement due to his volatile behavior. Asked if she'd ever feared for her or her children's safety, Tasha said she never had. In hindsight, Tasha's optimism was tragically misplaced. The police investigation was harrowing, piecing together a chilling sequence of events. A disturbing Google search on December 30th stood out, revealing Michael's firearms queries just days before the deadly shooting, painting a chilling picture of his intentions. The search results revealed alarming questions, such as inquiries about how loud a 9mm gunshot is, what a gunshot sounds like, what to do if gunshots are heard near one's house, if a single gunshot in the neighborhood at night would be immediately recognized, and if one would be brave enough to call the police, how loud a gunshot in the house would be, and if a neighbor would hear a gunshot in the garage, and how loud a 40-millimeter pistol is. Michael's suicide note said he'd rather rot in hell than endure his wife's controlling behavior. He felt desperate, frustrated, and trapped, repeatedly asking for help that never came. Determined to end the manipulation, he refused to be a burden to society. The case's details have shocked many, revealing a deeply dysfunctional family plagued by violence. Michael's actions were premeditated, carefully planned to catch his family off guard. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lindsay Wilson. Lindsay Wilson was a kind and loving young woman. Lindsay had a deep-seated need for connection and love. Her major misstep was that she misjudged her partner and invested herself in their toxic relationship. Lindsay was 17 when she found out she was pregnant. Growing up in a loving and supportive family, she had never expected to become a mother so young. Although she was emotionally mature, what made it even more difficult was that her boyfriend, whom she had been dating since she was 13, abandoned her as soon as he learned he was going to be a father. His sudden departure left Lindsay feeling both upset and scared. Lindsay was all too familiar with the physical and financial strains of motherhood. Her family, the Wilsons, were loving and close-knit, but they had often struggled to make ends meet. Despite their financial challenges, Lindsay's parents had always worked hard to provide for their children. When Lindsay met Mitchell, 5 months into her pregnancy, she felt like she had been given a rare gift. Mitchell, who was 20 years old at the time, was attentive, caring, and gentle. What impressed Lindsay most was that her pregnancy didn't deter him. Instead, he was eager to be involved and supportive. Mitchell told Lindsay that he had fallen in love with her at first sight and wanted to spend the rest of his life with her, raising her child as his own. To show his commitment, Mitchell began working overtime to ensure that Lindsay and their unborn child would not have to worry about anything. 20-year-old Mitchell was a true gentleman. He was attentive and loving to Lindsay, despite her delicate condition. In fact, Mitchell had fallen deeply in love with her at first sight and wanted to spend his life with her, including raising her child as his own. At the time, Mitchell was earning a good income. However, when they announced their decision to get married, their parents were shocked. They felt that their 5-week relationship was too short to withstand the challenges and circumstances that came with marriage. Despite their concerns, Lindsay's relatives noticed a positive change in her since being with Mitchell. She had regained her cheerfulness and good health. However, some of them found Mitchell's behavior to be a bit insincere. Nevertheless, no one interfered with their decision to get married, and instead chose to keep their doubts to themselves. The wedding took place in August 1995, surrounded by a small, intimate group of family and friends, mostly from the bride's side. The groom's side was noticeably underrepresented, with only his parents, a brother, and 2 friends in attendance. Despite the celebratory atmosphere, Lindsay's relatives couldn't shake off their uneasy feelings about the union. However, Lindsay herself was over the moon, believing she had found her perfect match. As the evening wore on, their happiness was short-lived. A disagreement erupted, and the newlyweds' argument played out in front of their guests. The reason for Mitchell's outburst seemed trivial, and his reaction was disproportionately intense. The situation escalated, with Mitchell grasping Lindsay's hand and violently shaking her, leaving everyone in attendance stunned and uncomfortable. Mitchell appeared agitated and threatening, causing concern. When he calmed down, he apologized to everyone and made light of the situation, attributing his behavior to holiday stress. Although Lindsay didn't think much of the incident at the time and soon forgot about it, it was actually one of the warning signs of their toxic relationship. After getting married, Mitchell and Lindsay moved into an apartment in Southport, away from their parents. They started their life together and soon welcomed a baby girl named Robin. However, Lindsay soon discovered that her husband had a volatile temper, which cast a shadow over the joy of their new family. Mitchell's moods were unpredictable, One moment he was happy and joking, and the next, he would become aggressive and unreasonable. She thought she was maintaining a delicate balance at home, but in reality, she was giving in to his control. He dictates her every move and gets angry if she misses a phone call or doesn't pick up. Their arguments often ended with Mitchell begging for forgiveness and declaring his love. For a while, it seemed that peace had been restored, but their cycle of arguments became more and more intense. Lindsay struggled to recognize he she once loved. She frequently shared her concerns with her relatives, who urged her to leave the relationship and end her suffering. However, Lindsay found it difficult to acknowledge her mistake and admit defeat. Lindsay's relatives noticed that she often dwelled on memories of the past. Whenever her husband promised to change and return to his gentle and caring ways, Lindsay wanted to believe him and waited for him to fulfill his promises. Meanwhile, Mitchell's controlling behavior intensified. He restricted Lindsay's freedom, forbidding her from going out alone in the evenings and eventually requiring her to be accompanied by him at all times. Despite his possessiveness, Mitchell was seen with other women, sparking Lindsay's suspicions of infidelity. Lindsay confided in her older sister about her concerns, sharing an incident where a woman visited their home, unaware that Mitchell was married. This revelation led to another argument, which escalated into physical violence. Physical abuse gradually became a part of Lindsay's life. To control her and protect his reputation, Mitchell started limiting her interactions with others. He began by restricting her contact with neighbors, friends, and acquaintances, and eventually with her family. Lindsay, unhappy and fearful of being caught and punished, tried to secretly maintain contact with her loved ones. Despite the problems in their relationship, Lindsay stayed with Mitchell. One reason was the comfortable life he provided. He had a good income, supported her and their child, and paid the bills, leaving her without any financial worries. Lindsay's life changed dramatically when she found herself pregnant again. Although her husband, Mitchell, was a good father to her daughter from a previous relationship, she felt that having another child would be unwise in their current circumstances. She decided to have an abortion. When Mitchell found out about her decision, he became furious and verbally and physically abused her. Lindsay packed her belongings and took her daughter to her parents' home. Her family was relieved to see her. At first, Lindsay was happy to be apart from her husband, Mitchell. But over time, she started to miss him. Mitchell, eager to win her back, would call her constantly, begging her to return. Despite initial reservations, Lindsay was eventually won over by Mitchell's claims that he had changed. Everything seems to be back to normal, they are even looking forward to another child. However, their happiness was short-lived. After 6 months, Mitchell's violent temper flared up again. Although he didn't harm Lindsay, who was pregnant at the time, he unleashed his fury on their apartment. He smashed furniture, ripped doors off their hinges, and damaged the walls. He even threw their television out the window and vandalized their car. The landlord, fed up with the destruction, demanded that they pay for the damages and move out. The family's financial situation became even more dire. As a result, they was forced to take out a significant loan and downsize to a smaller, more modest apartment. In October 1997, Lindsay gave birth to their son, Jack. Mitchell was overjoyed at the arrival of his child. However, the relationship between the spouses continued to deteriorate over time. Mitchell often left home for extended periods, sometimes for just a few days, sometimes for an entire week, frequently citing trivial or made-up reasons. Although Lindsay had grown accustomed to her husband's behavior, she eventually reached her breaking point and filed for divorce, returning to her parents' home when Mitchell abandoned her once again. Lindsay realized she couldn't handle the separation from Mitchell on her own, so she reached out to a local charity that supports women in crisis. The charity helped her find affordable housing in a different city, allowing her to start fresh. However, she was worried that Mitchell would find out her new contact information, so she took steps to protect herself. When Mitchell began making threats, she took it a step further and got a restraining order from the police. With the help of a therapist, Lindsay started rebuilding her life. She kept a journal to document her experiences, intending to use it as a warning for her children in the future, so they wouldn't make the same mistakes she did. The journal entries supported what her relatives had said about the problems within the family. Unfortunately, despite her efforts to stay hidden, Mitchell eventually discovered her phone number and began calling her constantly, demanding to see their son. Lindsay, now free, soon felt lonely and couldn't resist her ex's persistence. They started talking and seeing each other again, eventually moving back in together. Ashamed of her weakness, Lindsay kept this a secret, but it eventually came out. Her relatives and friends were shocked and disappointed by her reunion with he they considered a tyrant, and they couldn't understand why she had taken him back. Her relatives continued to dislike Mitchell and cut off most communication with him. Despite their efforts to help her, Lindsay repeatedly returned to the abusive relationship. As a result, her loved ones eventually gave up trying to save her, accepting the situation and distancing themselves. This time, however, Lindsay's decision would prove to have devastating consequences. After Lindsay disclosed her situation, a social worker began monitoring the young family. However, the social worker reported that she had been unable to contact Lindsay for several weeks. Every time she visited the home, Lindsay's husband, Mitchell, would answer the door, and he was also the first to answer any phone calls. Despite the social worker's repeated requests to speak directly with Lindsay, Mitchell would make excuses and prevent her from doing so. The social worker would leave her contact information, but Lindsay never returned her calls. The social worker became concerned for Lindsay's safety and requested a welfare check. When law enforcement responded to the report and visited the address, they too were unable to speak with Lindsay. Mitchell claimed that he had not seen his wife at home for a long time, but he did not consider her missing. Mitchell said that Lindsay participated in a party with a friend on Christmas Eve, returning home early in the morning somewhat intoxicated. This led to an argument with Mitchell. Following the argument, Lindsay packed her belongings and left without saying goodbye to the children. Mitchell claimed Lindsay had left him for another man and no longer wanted to have any contact with him. Mitchell's subsequent media appearances sparked widespread attention. He presented himself as a worried and abandoned husband, pleading for Lindsay to return. However, during these interviews, he also shared intimate details about their marriage, occasionally speaking negatively about his wife. Mitchell believes that Lindsay's actions stemmed from a desire for a lavish lifestyle. He said to have seen her driving an expensive car, which he thought was proof that she had left their children for a wealthy man. Despite her public image, Mitchell was enjoying the freedom of a single life. The search for Lindsay began with conversations with her relatives. During these conversations, it was learned that she was last seen by her family on December 11th. At that time, she appeared to be in high spirits and looking well, with her behavior being normal. During their investigation, detectives were surprised that no one had expressed concern about the young wife's whereabouts for 2 months. However, they soon discovered a plausible explanation. Mitchell had a history of limiting his wife's interactions with others, even close relatives. In the past, her family had difficulty staying in touch with her due to Mitchell's controlling behavior, which made it more believable that Lindsay had intentionally kept a low profile for an extended period. The news of Lindsay's disappearance alarmed everyone, despite the initial assumption that she was not the type to be concerned about. She was known for her modest lifestyle and never drank. Additionally, her husband had restricted her from having any contact with the outside world, including friends and acquaintances. Several inconsistencies in Mitchell's statement to the police raised suspicions about his character. It seemed unlikely that Mitchell would willingly let his wife leave, and that Lindsay would not abandon her children to a controlling husband. To clarify the situation, the police conducted a thorough investigation, interviewing all of Lindsay's acquaintances and searching for anyone who may have seen her after the family gathering. They also questioned their neighbors and obtained surveillance footage from the residential complex and surrounding areas. Lindsay's disappearance was not immediately noticed, and by the time it was. However, investigators later discovered that she was last seen in person on December 15th at the local post office, where she sent several letters and postcards. Her older sister confirmed that they met that day, despite Mitchell's disapproval. During their brief conversation over tea, Lindsay handed her sister a note and asked her to read it later. Unfortunately, the sister forgot about the note in her purse and was unable to find it later, leaving its contents a mystery. As the months passed, investigators grew increasingly suspicious that she was no longer alive, given her prolonged absence and lack of contact. Although they couldn't charge Mitchell without sufficient evidence, their suspicions about him intensified as they learned more about their history and relationship. Lindsay's parents and detectives suspected Mitchell was involved in her disappearance, but lacked concrete evidence. Searches at their home and nearby turned up nothing. In a televised interview, Mitchell denied any wrongdoing, even claiming Lindsay's family would eventually apologize for suspecting him. Just before the holidays, Mitchell sent a postcard and hair dye to the lead investigator. The postcard's sarcastic message mocked the detective, implying he needed confidence and to cover his gray hair. This gesture showcased Mitchell's arrogance, despite portraying himself as a victim in the media. The investigation team held an interview to clarify some aspects of the case, but they didn't reveal all the details. They suggested that Mitchell Key, a well-known family man, was not what he seemed to be. In 2000, Mitchell Key found himself at the center of a scandal when it was discovered that he had been forging his wife's signature to claim social benefits. Although this revelation indirectly supported the theory that he was involved in Lindsay's disappearance, the investigators had trouble making progress due to Mitchell's popularity. Many people defended him, arguing that as a single father, he needed financial assistance. Despite this, the detectives were able to charge him with fraud. Mitchell was found guilty and sentenced to a month of community service. Mitchell's situation took a turn for the worse. The forged signature of his missing wife raised more than a few eyebrows, and the public's outrage grew. As the criticism mounted, Mitchell's composure began to fray, and he lashed out at the media for invading his personal life. In a groundbreaking development, a visitor to an amusement park on June 1, 2000, stumbled upon a disturbing discovery that rekindled the Lindsay disappearance case. Their dog's strange behavior near the roller coaster led to the discovery of human remains. Forensic analysis confirmed the remains belonged to Lindsay, revealing she had been the victim of a violent crime. This breakthrough shifted the investigation's focus to finding the person responsible. On June 7th, Mitchell was questioned by detectives for over 36 hours, during which time he eventually cracked under the pressure and confessed to murdering and dismembering his wife. According to his testimony, Lindsay had asked for a divorce on December 15, 1998, after meeting with her sister. This request enraged Mitchell, causing him to attack and strangle her in front of their children. He then hid her body in their bedroom, taking steps to conceal the smell. Realizing he needed help to dispose of the body, Mitchell turned to his brother Elliot, a butcher, for assistance. Although Elliot was initially hesitant, Mitchell eventually convinced him to help. While their children played in the next room, the brothers dismembered Lindsay's body and later scattered her remains throughout the city. The murderer showed no remorse or empathy during his confession. Instead, he seemed to take pride in his actions, saying that without his confession, they would never have been able to prove his guilt. He then led the authorities to the locations where he had hidden the victim's body parts. Unfortunately, her head and one hand were never found. The forensic examination confirmed that all of those of Lindsay, leaving no doubt about Mitchell's guilt. The trial of the Mitchell brothers took place in January 2001 and was a relatively straightforward process. Mitchell was found guilty of first-degree murder and received a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 17 years. A court-appointed psychiatrist observed that Mitchell displayed classic characteristics of a narcissist with sadistic tendencies. Elliot, Mitchell's brother, was sentenced to 7 years in prison for his role in covering up the crime. Lindsay's children were taken care of by her grandparents, who gave them their last name. 3 months after the sentence, the Wilson family faced another tragedy when one of Lindsay's older brothers, unable to cope with the loss, took his own life in the family's attic. In his goodbye note, he expressed his desire to reunite with Lindsay, saying he saw no point in living in a world he considered cruel. As of 2017, Mitchell Key, Lindsay's murderer, became eligible for parole, but as of January 2023, his parole requests have been denied 3 times.